Good evening, everybody. Welcome back to 22 Panels, where my guests tonight are Joe Kelly and Ken Niimura back, this time to eventually have a spoiler-filled conversation about Immortal Sergeant, because it's always fun when we get to talk to people at the beginning when we're wondering what's going to happen, and when we get to talk to them again at the end when it's been long enough that if you don't know what happened, you can pause the damn podcast, go read the book, and come back. Otherwise, deal with it. Um, but before we get into Immortal Sergeant, I also have Dr. Edgar Ramos, and I completely forgot to get the name of our other psychologist.
My name is Lee Woods. I'm a counselor, not a doctor yet, but working my way towards it.
Who is a massive Joe Kelly fan as well. So we had to bring them both. And Edgar will be writing about Deadpool, and Joe is writing Deadpool again. So we're gonna lead with some Deadpool. Joe, do you want to tell us about Deadpool and Wolverine?
Sure. Well, thanks for having us back, guys. It's good to see you again.
It's always good to see you. And I
And
actually did like an opening there rather than just starting in media res. I don't know what's
yeah,
wrong
that
with
was
me
good.
tonight.
That was very professional. Very professional. But no, it's great. It's great to be back. And Ken and I haven't had a chance to chat for a while, so it's very makes me happy to see Ken all the time. But yeah, right now the first issue of Deadpool Wolverine WW3 just came out, and with Adam Kubert, and it looks glorious. So
Lots of action.
a lot of action, a lot of Adam being amazing, which is awesome because I don't have to work as hard.
Yeah, I mean,
Because
did you do the book Marvel style? Because it feels like you could have.
no, I never write that style, but I could have with Adam.
I mean, it does. I mean, and I read it quickly after I'd read a ton of other books, so I've like forgotten half of it, except that Wolverine and Deadpool fight a lot, and I think they fight other people too. But didn't they fight each other a little bit while they were figuring out if they were supposed to be fighting other people? Because it was just a big long fight that I could totally see Joe saying, "Hey, Adam, just draw me Wolverine and Deadpool fighting for 22 pages, and I'll fill in the jokes."
Yeah, I wish it was that easy. Unfortunately, I can't do that. I'm morally incapable of doing that.
I
But
mean,
the
Stan would have.
oh,
That's what
I
you need. That's what you need on your computer. What would
Stan would have done
Stan
it.
do?
I don't remember if I told you this story last time, but when I worked with Gene Colan on Daredevil, at
Okay.
one point he was like, and it was very cool to get to work with, one of the greats.
Yeah.
But he was like, called me up at one point. He's like, I was wondering if we could do this the way Stan and I used to do it. I was like, well, what's that? He's like, he would just call me on the phone and kind of tell me like, there's going to be bank robbers and Daredevil's going to stop it, and I could draw what I want. And I was like, I don't think they'll pay me for that, Gene. I don't think I'm allowed to do that. And he was very kind about it, and allowed me to write my scripts, but it was pretty amazing.
You probably could have worked it out with him where he just didn't let them know that that was how it was happening.
I was too young and
And then you
terrified
could
at
have
that
still
point.
gotten paid.
Yeah, and at that point in my career, I was sure I was going to get fired any second, so I couldn't give anybody any possible reason to do so. But he was
That's a
he was a
great story.
gentleman, so it's a story I cherish because it was very fun.
Yeah, it's fantastic.
We call that imposter syndrome. You're not quite there yet.
I think I feel that a large quantity of comics creators never grow out of it.
Oh yeah, I mean I think creators in general. I mean, it's like you talk about how many actors still like, actors we love watching like throw up before a take and all this kind of nonsense. Like
Right.
I don't know what it takes for that to get obliterated. I'm just better at getting over it. Like that's what I always tell like young writers and young creatives in general. It's like I just know how to move past it faster. Like
Yeah.
that's kind of it. But it still rears its head big time.
Being humble is key. Being humble is definitely key.
So
Yeah,
I'm
and
going
I
with
guess
the
like
dead.
just like oh
Go ahead. No.
no, but like I mean I have the same. I'm just the same. So like I cannot talk about anyone. But like I guess it's just like being able to like question yourself about what you do. Like all the at every stage is actually not a bad thing to
No.
do. So in that regard, I think it's useful.
Yeah,
then
absolutely.
if it's paralyzing, then certainly not. But like, I don't know. I've been overly confident sometimes, and I don't think it's always led to good things. So I always like just being like, am I sure about what I'm doing here, or what's going on here? Yeah.
I'll let the counselors and psychologists correct me on this because I've just had the years of therapy, but I think the like sweet spot is to be overconfident in contract negotiations and then question yourself and be self-reflective while actually doing the work.
Well, let me say this. It's funny hearing Joe and Ken say this because I always find myself at like, but no, you guys are celebrities. You're famous. Like you're,
Right.
like that's real stuff, and I remember like first becoming a psychologist and having this like the title doctor, and it's like, I'm a doctor? Like, how does that work? And and then going to my first like meetings with other doctors and then seeing like famous, and I'm saying air quotes here, famous
Famous
psychologists.
among doctors, they understand comic famous. Doctor famous is the same.
Famous psychologists, who are theorists or whatnot. And I won't mention anyone in particular, but I remember being introduced to one for the very first time and sitting at their table and being so panicked and scared, like, why am I sitting there? Like, I'm like, my suit, I'm doing a, XLT suit here, like, from a cheap store. Like, what am I gonna, like, I was so nervous and scared. And then it all went to hell when they actually directed questions to me. Started sweating profusely, heart racing. I was just like, and I started stuttering and I couldn't answer. And I'm like, well, this is what I do. And I started sharing just what I do clinically. And at the time, I specialized in gangs. And this theorist said, uh, I don't work with gangs. So this is the first time me hearing about this. And I just stood there like for the first time in my life, I became and what I felt was as a real doctor in that moment going, I don't know everything they know. I can't even imagine as much as they know, but what I do know, I know well. And it just that was the idea of how I see this idea of empowerment and how I see everybody. It's like, you may not be, I can't even think of a famous actor, Antonio Banderas, but you are you and you're good at what you do. And that's what makes you great, is that there's no one better than you. And that's the way I kind of advise people and get through it. Contract negotiations. Yeah, you're talking to the wrong people because I'm the guy. When I have a patient that can't pay, it's like, oh, but you really need help. Like, don't worry about it. I'll talk to you. And it's just, I have that bleeding heart,
Yeah,
So you're
yeah,
talking to the wrong field.
but do you say that when when you've got somebody asking you to give a speech at a prestigious high school or whatever, where they've got the money?
I'm also the wrong person for that.
You do that too cheap
tend to
too.
go like, hey, whatever, my answer has always been,
Whatever you think is fair. Are
really
you
chill
like
out
me?
because
Whatever you think is
I
fair.
regret, like, because my thing has been, I was given a gift.
Yeah.
It's my gift to share. That's the way I tend to look at it.
Yeah, and I think that's commendable, and generally how myself and uh, certainly the Man of Action guys, and I feel like Ken tends to approach these things too. Like we've all had opportunities where we could work with people and teach people things, and it's a wonderful thing to be able to do, to sort of pass knowledge along. And that's we're lucky enough to be making a living plenty of other ways, so I don't have to like ding every educational opportunity to be like, all right, well, what am I getting? And then there are times where you go, this is literally a building for commerce. Like if I'm walking into a comic convention where they're going to charge people $100 at the door, thanks, but why are you inviting me, and why am I paying for X, Y, and Z? Like then it doesn't make
Right.
sense to me. Like that's not cooperative. And I appreciate what fans get out of that. I appreciate those interactions. I've done them for many, many, many years. We're the best industry for creator to fan connection, bar none. Like maybe in the last 10 years, the sort of like influencer crowd, they have their own sort of version of
I mean, I
that kind of
have been
connection.
so told that the mini part of our industry, the My Little Pony cons, have us beat.
Oh, sure. Well, yeah,
Everybody
I
I
mean,
know who's
everybody's got
ever
their special.
everybody I know that
Yeah.
like I've talked to a couple of people that that they're comics people, but they've done the My Little Pony comics, and so they've done both cons, and they're like, you have no idea how nice they are to you there, how they always make certain you're taken care of. They'll bring you stuff to eat at your table. Nobody's ever like, what do you mean you can't do this? Or in this book,
Mm.
I'm like, So if you have the concept of love and friendship as part of your con scene,
There
get
you go.
nicer people.
But
I'll take it.
that
The
sounds like
fans
a
are never the problem. It's the people running the things. And
Oh, I know.
That's where you get into it.
No,
but
and that's
I guess.
go ahead.
Oh, sorry. We, like, the same way, you have the mallet, which is supposed to be like short on the front and then long on the back. And some people say it's like, business on the front and party on the back. I guess like we need like the same approach for business. It's like business on the front, and then we got all the imposter syndrome and everything on the
Exactly.
back for ourselves.
That's a good way to put it.
It's for
That's a
our
good way to
own
put it.
enjoyment, not for other people.
I love it. I love that it's now the psychological imposter mullet.
Yes, I love it. I love it.
And it
Andrew's
can
gonna
grow
steal
really-
that. I can see it. I can see
And
it. He's already stealing
can
it.
grow really long. I mean, it go very short and very long on the back, like lots of imposter syndrome, on the back for you.
Well, see, this is the other not at all secret of my job. I work with people like Ken, who also makes my life real easy. I've got like Adam, I've got Ken. I just sort of show up and go like, do the thing, and then they do it. Ken comes up with all the brilliant stuff, and I just go, signed by Joe Kelly.
No way.
Didn't you just explain that you can't work like that? I think he froze. He froze in the
It's a
middle
good
of
pose.
the
It's a
sliding.
really good pose.
It's a great pose. I wonder when Joe will come back.
Okay, no problem. Now that's the point where I'm telling you all the truth about
Yes.
Okay,
working
give
relationship.
me the dirt on Joe while he's
Yes.
frozen.
He's probably hearing but cannot move, and he's like
That would make
screaming
it
at the
even
screen.
better.
Yes.
Oh,
Cannot do anything.
and this is the story I heard about Joe.
Yes.
Oh my God. Can we wait
Oh,
for
for
him?
him, it's frozen.
We'll wait for a second, and I guess we'll move Umami up front. So Ken, I finally got around to reading Umami, and it's so sweet and wonderful, and I love me a YA comic, and I love me a cooking comic, and it's got both of those and an adventure to boot. So like, first, what inspired it?
Right. Well, I started working on that quite a long time ago because it's been published between I guess like 2000 and I don't know if it was 17 and 18 maybe.
Sounds right.
So basically, the easy way. Oh, there he is. Yay.
Well, now I'm on my phone because apparently my whole house went down. So there you go. Just as I was saying what a horrible shit person I am.
You were stopped right here.
I'm not done talking about all the truth about
Ken was giving us a good story about you.
He was giving us the dirt,
Yes.
and then we pivoted to
for it.
Umami. We'll come back to you soon.
Okay.
Yeah, no worry. No, if you want to, like, we can go back to like Immortal Sergeant because we have like
because the question is actually asked. Let's answer it.
Do it.
Okay, sure.
Where we're going.
So yeah.
We don't want to
So,
make Tyler edit shit.
yes.
That's
So,
like work. He's got kids and he's a teacher.
we'll keep it short and simple. But like basically, I'm a role game nerd and fantasy and
Okay.
video games and everything. I just love that. But like the more I play them, I'm always like replaying old games, which I love, like PlayStation games or Super Nintendo and old ones. But
Old.
they tend to be pretty standard, like especially when it comes to like RPGs. It's always like a tale of growth and defeating evil and stuff. And it was just like interesting to me. The question was like, is there any way to like probably the opposite of what we're talking about with Deadpool, which is like, or superhero comics in general and shonen manga too. Like, I'm like, is there not any other way to solve problems other than like fighting people? Like, and I love shonen, but I'm like, is there not any? I mean, like, is it just the only one way? And at the same time, I was like curious about like, there are many common places, like you go to an inn, you stay for a night, and then maybe you go buy items and everything. And I was like, so what kind of lives do those people that live in those other places have? And so I was like, and also like, what are the kind of like characters that we rarely get to see in these like kind of fancy stories? So I thought, like, what if, and basically the premise, which is like actually very stupid, which is like, what if two cooks could actually save the world without beating anyone? That was it. And which is kind of like the anti RPG in a way.
Right.
And also there's a concept, because there are like two characters, one which is like a proper, let's say, cook following everything by the book, and the other who uses food in any other way other than feeding people. And to me, there was like maybe that was more like something about, where I was thinking more about, like, what is, let's say in the case of like art, like what is like respectable art or not, what's deemed to be worthy or not. And so the most, like, in a way, punk idea was like, what if you use, which is like actually a real like sacrilege in a way, what if you use food for something other than feeding people, which is actually
Right.
not, I'm not sure it's a very good idea, but like
You
just
made it
being
work.
just being playful, like what
Right.
if cooking could be used for something other than, and what if there were no rules? And so
I mean, yeah.
oh,
Well, I was going to say, we talked about it the last time you were on, the fact that you have worked in American comics, but split your life between Japan and France, right? You
mhm.
know, the influence of all three styles of comics shows up a ton in your
Oh, cool.
work.
Hmm.
So I mean, I liked the cooking influence. I liked the remind the French and Belgium comics will sometimes just be silly.
Hmm.
The cooking reminds me some of, have you ever read Mr. Impossible? He's a superhero whose power is that he can like move between panels.
Oh, nice.
So like one of my favorites
Patrol.
is like a kid reads an issue of a comic and loves it and is like sad that he has to wait a month to read the next issue. And Mr. Impossible climbs down, grabs the next issue, climbs back up, gives it to him. He reads it. And by the time he gets down there, he picks up the new issue and goes, "Man, I read this already."
Hmm. Nice. Yeah, I think like sometimes, I mean, overall, I'm pretty Joe agrees with me. Like something that I don't know, like there are people that can get away with like talking about like important subjects in a very like
Right.
important way. And
Right.
there's something in me where I mean, it's probably the imposter syndrome, but I can't. Like I need some humor, I need
Yeah.
some element there where I'm like, we're just like, I don't know, subverting the idea. And
Yeah.
that's when I find it fun, where there is something there where I'm like, I just want to read more about this. And so Mami was just born from there, and just like trying to make, because I've read tons of like comics and stuff as a kid that were
Right.
like super fun, and one of them for sure, like Dragon Ball, although far from there, but like where, I don't know, it was just like plain fun and just like alive, and I was like, can I do something like that? And so yeah, we've put out, I don't know if it was something like eight
Eight
issues
issues.
or
Eight
seven.
issues. It's all
And
available at Panel Syndicate, which is also where you can get Ed Brubaker and Marcos Martin's Friday, and a couple books from Alex DeCampi, and all sorts of good stuff. Pay what you want. So whatever you think it's worth, pay
yep.
that. And then when you love it, go back and buy it again and just add a zero to whatever you paid the first time, because Ken's got to eat.
Yes, and there is also like, Joe, is your book still there? I'm assuming
Yeah,
it is.
I have a children's book there,
Oh, do
which
you?
is a picture book on a website is a little tough, but I was like, well, we live in the 21st century. Maybe people read to their kids with iPads.
I
But
do.
yeah, I do have a children's book there called Claire's
Uh,
Hair.
If I,
I see it.
if I can ask a
It
quick
looks cool. I don't think I've read that one yet. It's one of the few things at Panel Syndicate I haven't read. It's I keep hoping that enough people will discover it and like pay to truly make it worth it for people, because I think it's like a decent way to go about making comics is if you could actually get enough people that would pay you to make it worth making the digital. And once you've made it, then options for, oh, we're going to do single issues like they did with Barrier, or we're going to do a really nice hardcover collection like they did with Private Eye or and Bad Karma, or we're going to do nice small paperback volumes like they're doing with Friday. You don't have the entrance cost or the same entrance cost because hopefully people gave you some money going into it that you can then turn it into more.
If I can,
So I need to remember to plug Panel Syndicate more often. That's my reminder to myself.
if I could add, Ken, so how much do you think your own cultural identities help flesh out umami?
Oh, I guess a lot. I mean, I wouldn't say that much like culture identities, but just like what I've experienced, probably. What I've read, things I've been to, that for sure. But like, I rarely try to make comics where I'm like, and just to zoom out, but like, there's this thing sometimes in comics too, where creators are being asked to work within their cultural setting, for example. And on the one hand, I do get why that's done that way. On the other, it's less interesting for me because I think like discovery for me is very important. That's why, for example, like working on Immortal Sergeant is so nurturing for me, because like I'm discovering new things that otherwise I wouldn't be exposed to.
I was actually about to read something that you wrote in Immortal Sergeant as soon as I can scroll down to it.
Oh yeah. And so for me, that like let's say going on a trip and like not knowing what I'm gonna get, it's actually very exciting. And so if I consciously go and be like, I'm gonna write about like my own, let's say something where I cross over Japan and Spain, it becomes more of like explanation of who I am, rather than just like me going on a trip discovering something. So to say, I think everything I've read and seen and been to and everything, of course, has nurtured the umami. I mean, absolutely. I wouldn't be here if it weren't for that. But I don't think, and like many of the references, like cities or places that you see in the comic, they're actually Spain. So I was like, so what if you did like fantasy comic, but rather than being inspired by Celtic or Lord of the Rings-ish influence, what if you took it from the Spanish point of view? But that was more like in a way like using that as like setting. It's just like so I'm going to draw from this other thing instead. And but yeah, I mean, like, so I didn't do that like consciously being like I'm going to portray Spain, Japan, or others, but I'm sure that the fact that I'm using partly a Spanish setting, or the fact that it's a cooking comic, although a little bit different, which is something that we see a lot in manga, probably says sort of shows a lot about who I am, or what I've been through.
It's starting to enter American comics more, but yeah, it's way more prominent in manga to have a food theme or a food with something theme.
Oh yeah, and then like, for example, like there is right now on Netflix, Delicious in Dungeon.
Yep.
I guess it's the name.
Yep.
It's a name.
I've been
And
reading the manga before it even became an anime. The manga's cool.
Which is great, right? And
I think
and
you
it's
might
kind
have
of like
even been the one that recommended the manga to me. I don't remember.
Oh, could be.
It came up the last time.
And it kind of draws from the same inspirations in a way. Where it's like a nerd just going, what if things happen in this world that we're oftentimes like shown in a very, very specific way. So I guess like it's also like, and it's funny, like when that came out, the comic came out, like we showed it to a couple of like publishers, and they were like, no, we already have like some other fantasy cooking comics. So I think like there was something in the air,
something in the ethos.
Yeah, and so probably just people like me that grew up reading these stories, and just like probably ask question what we're being shown. Sorry, what was the question?
Yeah, I don't
Sorry.
even remember anymore. I was going to say now that
Cultural
you,
influence.
Oh, yeah.
you gave me a really good segue to Immortal Sergeant, though I want to say
Okay, cool.
one last thing about umami that I really appreciated, because like you said, there was, there's the one chef that's very by the book and you must do the recipe, and then the cook who not only will like make the bridge out of bread or the wheel out of bread, but oh, we don't have this ingredient, well, let's sub this. Reminded me of my wife and I, particularly early in our relationship, where we're still strapped for cash sometimes, because she's very recipe based, and well, through our relationship she started playing with recipes more. I mean, she was taught you follow the recipe, she had them all memorized, but she made it the same way every time. But like, if we didn't have the ingredients, it would be my turn to cook, because I could do what I called the garbage dish. I'd go, I've got this, I've got this, I've got this, and I've got that. If I do this, it'll taste good.
Yeah, and I think like for example, like for the creative process is the same. You have the initial part where it's more chaotic and you're just drawing from everywhere, and then like a final part probably where you're editing more and you're like, this goes in, this goes out. So it's just, to me, it's like really like two
Right.
sides of probably anything in human life, but part of it has to do with like championing the person who just like goes in a way against the norm in a way,
Right.
not in a bad way, but sometimes we're being told like this is whatever thing in this category has to have these characteristics, and if not, it's not in here. And oftentimes, and that, for example, like probably has to do a lot with my upbringing, where oftentimes we were like, you're not Spanish enough or you're not Japanese enough for these reasons, and I was like, no, but actually, I am. It's just that
Right.
my idea of what the category is much wider than yours, than maybe I'm being told. So just like that idea of like questioning what you have in front of you and being like, does this is this does this definition of whatever I have in front of me work for me, or do I need to like reconsider it and make it my own? Is something that I don't know. It's my daily struggle all day.
I love that.
If I could, if I could ask one
something.
more question to that, just
Okay.
Japan is known for manga, and it has a respectable comic, I don't know the word I'm looking for, reputation or whatnot.
Industry.
Industry, thank you. But Spain, how does Spain have, or what would you say influenced you in terms of Spain, in terms of comic wise? In any comic, it doesn't have to be necessarily superhero.
Right. Well, I mean, the thing about Spain, the good thing, but it's not really good, is that there is a very small industry. Most of the people work for other countries, like Carlos Pacheco or Pepe Larraz, or people working for France. So there is a very small industry. The advantage there is that for already probably 20 years, they've been translating all kinds of comics into Spanish. So we would already have like manga and French comics and American comics all together, to the point where any Spanish creator could go and be like, I want to make a comic, but I want it to look like a French comic book. I mean, French album or a comic book. And that would be acceptable. And that's what I think helped many people be able to get into these other markets. So that's a very the counterpart of like not having an industry for real is that when at least we were exposed to many different things. But I think like for me personally, because I grew up mostly in Spain with tons of like Japanese culture around me, like there's in a way like I was reading these mangas or playing the games or everything, and I would come to Japan every so often, but like I wasn't here. So in a way, there's like this imaginary world that keeps building in your head, and that then of course it come here and sometimes gets confirmed or not at all. But like I think like that kind of like, how can I say, like in a way, like growing up in a family where I mean, and it's gonna be the same forever, where I know that I won't be able to have all my family in one single place ever, because they're divided into between two countries. So whichever I am, I'm gonna be missing one part, and that's what it is. It's not bad or good. It's just it
Is what
is.
it is.
And so it kind of like or I say it helps you in a way, probably develop imagination, because you have to like, you know, yeah, you have to like provide yourself that missing part in a way. And so, all of that like Japanese culture that I grew up with, that wasn't probably exactly, as it is, but it wasn't something that, just I had around, I think helped me very much, become a creator for sure, and taught me in a way the value of like, well, the power from imagination, basically. One thing is what you have, the other is what you do with what you have. And like, I'm sure that my definitions of many things are different from other people, let's say in Japan, or let's say like, so what is a Japanese? And I'm like, well, my idea is A, but I know that maybe other people have a different idea. But like, having that, and just like, the one thing that I like about the creativity in general is that I think it empowers people, as long as it's not like delusional. Like, it's like beyond what you have in front of you. What can you imagine, or what would you aspire to? And I think that's something that's very valuable. The other things like, will you be able to get that? That's a different story for sure. But like, I think like the first step of like, I can't picture myself doing this or that, or I can picture a world where these things happen. I think it's very important. So for me, in a way, like, not having, for example, like all my family in one single place, I think that was kind of like the starting point of, a creative life, for example, you could say.
Thank you. Thank you.
And I forgot the question, but sorry.
Ken-
Anyway, let's go into
Ken-
Very
Ken-
well. Good.
Sorry.
Every
Very
every
thoroughly.
time I talk to Ken, I discover more things that he's done that I want to read.
Uh-huh.
You illustrated a Learn Japanese with manga.
Yeah. That was a long time ago, but yeah,
But I
please.
think it's only recently been put on
Oh yeah,
Kindle.
probably, yeah.
Well,
You're right.
It says
Children Don't Come with
2023.
Instructions, I think is one that I just heard that you did a cover
Yeah.
for.
It was, sir.
Children Don't Come with Instructions. I think it's said in Spanish though. Niños no vienen con instrucciones.
Oh no, that was like a one. That's there was a TV show that was called Super Nanny. I guess it pretty also had it in. So it was like a manual based on that, and then at the same time, around the same time period of time, like I did like I think the Japanese title was some Japanese in Mangaland or something like that. So a method on how to learn Japanese through comic panels, manga panels in this case, and that was like super. Oh yeah, and it worked super well in Spain, as you say. Like, I think it's being out in English for a long time, but like recently they released it, and now it's widely available. And
I know that every time I talk to people, I look them up on Amazon and I look up their websites and I look at other stuff that I might have missed. And I don't remember seeing it the last time.
yeah.
Yeah, I should do it before I talk to them, but I have a tendency to do it when I'm trying not to interrupt them.
Don't you even worry. And but it's funny, like, it's one of those jobs that I did at the very beginning of my career. So like, oftentimes I don't even mention it much, because it's like.
But as the teacher, I now need to go read it.
Oh, it's
just because I'm a teacher and I want to see
how
it was tackled, particularly because I have no aptitude for languages whatsoever. So if it actually manages to teach me anything, I'll know it's brilliant.
I've heard from many people, like the person who wrote it, who's called Marc Bernabe, like the book was has been out for probably 20 years. So like, he's had tons of people coming to him and being like, I actually started learning Japanese thanks to your book, and that kind of got me into becoming a translator, stuff like that. So
Edgar often talks about learning English through Captain America.
Mm-hmm.
So
I learned
it actually makes a lot of sense to me that a comic would be a very good tool for language learning. And I can't believe that it never popped into my head before that a comic would be because the problem with like using video for language learning is you either have to be really good at pausing and going back and listening and all that stuff, or it's hard to keep up. And the problem with using just text is it's hard to like, oh, how do I associate this with? But if you do a comic, you can have that text, you can have that picture, you can get a better feel for. So yeah, no, I'm gonna have to look at that just on principle.
I wrote an article recently on learning emotions through comics, and amidst the work of writing this article, it's funny that you see how comics, graphic novels, not just for learning languages or whatnot, but just going to school, you learn physiology, you learn law through graphic novels with the picture. It really has grown, and it's become its own market on using graphic novels and comics in learning environments that I don't think is pushed as strong as it should be.
I
Yeah,
agree, and that's something that we're going to definitely have more conversations about this summer. I'm already starting to line them up because I cannot emphasize enough that I want more comics in education. But now we have two great segues to Immortal Sergeant, which means, sorry, Edgar, we're going to talk about the psychology of Deadpool at the end because you just talked about physiology and emotions, which Immortal Sergeant does really well, but Ken talked briefly while talking about how his culture was expressed in comics, how he often liked expressing other people's things too, which I read your afterword today, and you wrote, making a comic is a very long process that can take many years. What I like about working on projects with writers is that it allows me to explore subjects I normally wouldn't come up with on my own. This was after Joe had written that you had all sorts of options for what to work on with him, and you picked his personal story, and therefore he had to finally write it.
Yeah,
It's
and
true.
like again, we had no expectations of whatsoever on what to do, and so we had many options. I'm probably Joe can tell you more about that, but like, that would lean more into the entertainment side of comics, and they would have made, and they maybe made one day very good comics, but like I don't know that one. I don't know. I was like, if we're gonna work on something for a number of years, um, I'm certain, about what we're the hook, you could say, emotional hook is very clear. So that I thought that would, help us, go on the work on that on the long term. But Joe, maybe you have more to add to that.
Well, yeah, I mean, and it literally it's a story that I wanted to write for over 20 years. I mean, the first I went back and looked recently. It's like the first notes about it are over 20 years old, and because these stories, I grew up with all these cop stories. My dad was a cop, like we talked about last time, and Sarge is a very dramatized version of my dad. Like he's much worse than my dad ever was on many different levels. But a lot of the stories that are in there are real, and then the circumstances of my birth, which is what we couldn't talk about last time because it's sort of the crux of the story. When I found that out and then started processing that as I became sort of a young writer, that became the germ of this idea. And it sat with me for a really long time. And, when Ken and I were talking about what to do next, and he's like, this story, you've mentioned this story before, the story keeps coming up, like, let's do the hard one. And I'm glad, I'm glad he pushed me to finally do it. I mean, my dad passed away 16 years ago, and I started writing this, by now it was really in earnest writing it, 5 years ago, almost 6 years ago, by the time when Ken and I really first started. So it took a long time to get into that stuff in a way that felt comfortable. And luckily I had like the world's best, cheerleader and sounding board to do that stuff with, because Ken is, so talented on so many levels. And like you just heard before, the way he was describing his own work and his own journey, like so beautifully articulate about his own feelings, and even when he doesn't realize they're there. You know, it's like you were talking about, like, oh, I don't really pick from my life, and then you sort of like immediately hit like, oh yeah, I had to make all this up because my family's in two different places, and I was like, oh my God, like I'm sitting here trying not to, you know, have my heart break a little bit.
Away.
Yeah, exactly. So it's like, you know, Ken's got such an intuitive nature about those things, which comes through in work, and then also is a writer. So then you get, you know, for me, then I have, you know, an incredible, you know, just a powerhouse partner to pull out the best version of this thing that I've lived with and sat in and, you know, cogitated on for decades, right?
Would you say it was a cathartic experience for you?
Yeah, I mean, in a lot of ways, you know, for sure. Especially finally getting it done, you know, like it was a really, it, I wouldn't say, you know, I settled all of my like personal scores, you know, with my dad a long time ago. Like we were on good footing. He died relatively suddenly at the time. You know, we talked about, I think, for Giants, like he had diabetes and he lost a leg, and that was the inspiration for Giants, because it was the first time I ever thought about him as a mortal, you know, like it amortal, not immortal.
I was about to say, gotta enunciate better there.
Yeah, well, that's that
Particularly when
bad
the
Long
name of the
Island
book is
accent.
Immortal Sergeant.
There's a funny thing about that too, actually. But the you know, but then when he died, it was because the diabetes came back, but it came back super fast, and as opposed to a outside in thing, it was inside out. So the sort of you know, where you would normally lose toes and stuff was happening in his you know, in his internal organs and stuff. So all of a sudden it kicked in. So it was very quick. So I was literally getting on the plane to see him, and he died. So I didn't get to have that kind of goodbye, but we were in, you know, in good shape. So the catharsis was less about, oh, did I need to settle up with my dad? There was a lot more about just kind of like, you know, I mean, I miss him for all, you know, he loomed very large in my life. I mean, I've written about him a lot, you know, sometimes overtly and sometimes less so. You know, there's a Batman Superman story that I did that, you know, Batman talks like my dad. Like he talks like the way I would imagine my dad would have talked on a case as a detective. And there was some stuff that my dad had told me that's in there. You know, it's in that Batman dialogue. So you know, he's a figure that loomed very large in my life. So, you know, cathartic in good ways, not like cathartic in the like, oh, I had to finally purge this, and you know, I could walk out clean. I'm still plenty messed up, but it was it was a good experience to get it out, and as challenging as it was, and as emotional as it was, you know, because there's a ton of emotion in there for sure. And thank God again, you know, to do it with Ken, because Ken was just so generous and I've always said I like to try to embarrass you on any of these conversations, but it's like he's such a generous collaborator. Yeah, he's willing to, like, you know, oh, I drew 50 pages, but I think you're going to change them, so I'll just throw them out. Like, you know, he's that, or he's like, these aren't good enough, so I'm doing them again. I'm sitting there going like, you what? You know, that's 2 months worth of stuff. He's like, nah, I'll do it in a week. I mean, it's just crazy, but he makes the process so painless on my side. Like he might hang up the phone and then curse me out, but at least to my face, it's very, very painless experience. So
As we were saying previously when you weren't here, but no, but like to me, you know, it's more about like, for example, like Joe and I, in theory, already have an idea of what we would like to do next. We're not going to say anything about it, but we already, again,
Oh, come
like,
on. Nobody listens to this show. You can spill the beans.
I'm gonna sign language. I'm gonna tell you what it is, and but for that new one, if that's the one we finally do, the emotional core is very clear. So I think that's that, you know, that
well, and
how do I
I'm
say
going to build off of that. I'm going to interrupt you for 1 second with that, because
Sure.
we were together promoting the book in Europe in the fall last year, and it was so great. We had an incredible trip. Like it was so awesome. And traveling with Ken is also such a joy for any number of reasons, not the least of which he picks good restaurants. but he also, because he speaks every language, it's just like, oh, we can hang out with all these cool people. It's great. But I said, hey, I had an idea. I'm not really sure what this is. Blah, blah, blah. This is what I think. And then he just looks at me. He's like, so this is the book about blank. And he says this thing that's very emotional. And I just like start crying immediately. I'm just like, yep, that's what it is. I didn't know that's what it was, but yes, that's exactly what it is. And so he's very intuitive, at least at reading me. I'm a pretty light
I mean,
reader.
it's always much easier, probably, right? Reading other people than yourself, because I'm not very good at that for myself. But like, I think like over time, like I've realized that oftentimes when I get scripts from people, it's taking me time. Like, let's say like I read something and I'm like yes or no, and sometimes I have a hard time, especially when I have to say no. I have a hard time writing that email where I'm like, for these reasons, I'm
Hey,
really
at
bad at
least
it.
you're kind enough to write the email rather than ghosting them.
Right, but uh, but it's I've gotten better at it, but it's
I'll
so
take the
difficult.
most awkwardly worded email over no response.
Right. Yeah, no, and as a creator too, I like that too. But like recently I was like, okay, this is a thing. And it's that oftentimes like maybe the story itself is very good, but I'm not connecting. Like there's no emotion underneath, or there isn't something. Basically, like let's say a human experience underneath that's supporting that story. And then as a human being, I'm not connecting with that story. It's like, yeah, there are these scenes or these things, amazing things happening, but it's like at the end of the day, as a human being, like what am I connecting with? And I don't, maybe if I don't find that, then I finally realize like that's when I'm just like out of the script. I'm like, I don't know what to do with it. With Joe stories, we do have that like very honest human core. So then like building around it, yeah, I think it's easier. Uh but to be honest, like the treat here is that it's very difficult. I mean, it's a very difficult exercise. Like even if I try to do something, or the times of maybe I've been like, oh, what if I create something around this like experience I've had? It's not an easy thing to do at all, and I haven't succeeded for the most part. So that's the thing I find really brave about what the two books Joe and I we've made together. Like there's that honesty, there is that like openness about what Joe felt at different points, and that's really what draws me to these stories. And I'm like, it's a real privilege to be able to work with those material with those stories, because it's like I said, like it's not oftentimes that creators decide to be that open about things they feel. So in that sense, personally, like from that point on, I think everything it's so much easier actually.
If I could build off that, do you think that that's part of the success is writing about your emotional experiences as opposed to writing about a emotional experience is important, and two is being able to be open about you wrote your own emotional experience, because there's a lot of comic books out there that can be very well emotionally like just connecting. But you don't see the writer or the artist talking about it too much, about it was a shared experience they had, or anything connection to them, and it kind of makes it a little bit colder, like, huh, well, it's just a story. So do you think that it's the openness, one, of the writer and artist to talk and share that it is a real story, and two, does it matter that it is a real emotional experience and not just a story about an emotional experience?
Hmm.
To whoever wants
I
to
guess
get
it. Oh,
Oh,
go
go ahead,
ahead,
Ken.
Joe, because I probably.
Oh, well, I mean, it's funny. I think about that a lot because, and Ken knows this, like I almost exclusively consume anime and manga right now. And it's been like that for a while. Like, especially during the pandemic, because pre-pandemic, I was watching all this really dark, like Handmaid's Tale and Breaking Bad. It was just like it was too much dark. And then I got very dark. And my son introduced me to My Hero, and I was just like, all right, I'm gonna start watching Shonen and whatever. And there's so much there are so many things in shonen and in manga and anime in general that I think that you could very callously look at it and go, well, this is just sort of like good melodrama, right? Like this is there are emotions, but it's sort of like orchestrated, right? But I tend to, and I'm a sucker for that. Like I am a sucker for good stuff. Like when Deku is going to try his hardest, god damn it, and his arms are breaking or whatever, I will be sitting there crying. Like I don't care. Like I'm a complete sucker for that stuff. And as an audience member, I know that I'm bringing a lot to that experience. You know, that somebody else may watch it and or read it and enjoy it, but they're not necessarily relating in the same way. And we've really, Man of Action guys have we've seen this over the course of years with the cartoons that we've made. It's like people respond to the Ben 10 relationships or the Generator X relationships in ways sometimes that we intended it, and they're just amplified for them, and sometimes in ways we never would have intended, and they take on a life of their own. That's how you get into fan fiction, all that stuff. And I've come to realize that they both are valid. It's like I prefer my approach for work just for myself, because if I, like Ken said, if I don't have my emotional in, it doesn't matter if I'm writing Wolverine in Deadpool or Spidey or whatever, or writing my book with Ken. If I don't have my way in, I start to default to plot, and plot is boring to me. Like it's after you do it for X amount of time, you just get to the point where you go like, like you were joking about before. It's like Marvel style. It's like, okay, I draw them punching, and then I just need 4 pages of them chatting. It's like, I don't want to do that. I've never wanted to do that. So I tend to start from an emotional place, but that just, I wouldn't say that that's better or worse. It's just for me, because I mean, there are so many things that I think, and emotion is a big, broad term too, right? Like I recently, they just had the ad for the new Crow movie, right? The reboot that's coming out. When I was like a 20-year-old, like my late teens into my 20s, there were 2 books I read every year. It was like a thing. It was like my little comics pilgrimage, and it was The Crow and it was Dark Knight Returns. It was just the most like emo, like I'm a young male with a lot of hormones trying to figure my shit out. So here's the most like macho, like I'm dealing with trauma, but I'm also like sad, like all this every year, right? And I don't know. I think plenty of people look at The Crow as just like a gothic revenge story. But I was filling it as an empty vessel with all of my, unbridled testosterone and not knowing what to do with myself. And I love that we can do that. I love that we can sort of do both, that we can sort of go, here's the cup. I filled it up with as much as I think I can, and there's a space left for you. And then there's like, here's kind of an empty vessel. Like I did the best that I could, and now you fill it up. Either way is valid to me.
That
So I hope that
that
makes sense.
that reminds me of why we've started doing or at least why I've started doing so many book clubs on 22 panels, is that with all arts, the consumer is the final collaborator. But I think that that's
Well said.
true 10 times over for comics because of the interactive nature.
Yeah, totally. Mhm.
Comics are the only medium where the reader almost completely sets the pace. I mean, Ken can probably comment some on this, but I mean, artists have some ability to set pacing by the way they make panels, by the way they try to draw your eye, but like only some ability. The reason that comics are the only medium that I can do horror in is the parts that I can't handle in books or movies, because either the director or the writer are deciding how much time I have to spend with it. I can go, okay, got the information I need, and flip the page,
The
Um,
reader projects and interprets their emotion of their art and the words
right.
their own discretion. And I think that's the beauty of what it is that's done, is that what other form do you completely interpret, your emotions and put it on, just by understanding without even being written, you put your own emotion on it. So that's a beautiful thing.
And I mean, that's why I love doing the book clubs. Is why I love bringing voices like Edgar, and I forgot his first name again. Will Lee. Lee.
Will, Will,
Will. We're gonna call him Will now. He looks like a Will.
just a Will. I'll call him Will.
Lee. You should have put Dr. Edgar Ramos and Lee. Then I'd be able to read it. Or Lee, get yourself a name tag.
Look, he's still swinging over Joe Kelly right now. I'm in the room. Joe, like, he's just that's how he's feeling right. Let me tell you, like
I get it. I always like
no
it.
swooning necessary.
My favorite part of our first baseball and comics podcast is I had Derek Gold, who's the longtime beat writer for the Cardinals. So even people who aren't Cardinals fans, if they're baseball fans, they know who he is. He's like a celebrity in his field. And Scott Snyder was there too. And like Derek Gold couldn't speak for the first 20 minutes because he's like, I got emails from him for like a week afterwards. I can't believe I got to meet Scott Snyder.
We're gonna have to process this afterwards.
Yeah, we
Trust
are.
me. We're gonna.
100%.
So how did you feel? Are you okay? Like you shut down on me.
Right. No, actually, it's something that I have to psych myself up for interview. I like repeat interviews because I'm more comfortable. I still have to psych myself up for interviews, which is sometimes hard because it's like the people I'm around don't know how cool you guys are. So I have to like both explain why you're superstars and then, I mean, I forget who I was. Who was I? Oh no, I had a Tom King interview coming up, and like the person I was talking to didn't have any point of reference. I'm like, so what's your favorite band? And they're like, 21 Pilots. So like, imagine that or it wasn't even a Tom King episode. It was when he sent me a copy of Wonder Woman 2 months in advance. And I'm like, imagine they sent you the album that you didn't know existed yet and asked for your take on it. And they're like, holy shit. I'm like, that's what I'm going through right now.
Yeah.
But
you okay, Will?
I'm good.
And it never goes away. I was actually sitting with John Suntress at C2E2, and there's nobody who's talked to more people in this business than John Suntress. And we were still trading stories about like recent times where we're like, so-and-so wants to talk to me. That's so awesome.
Oh no, and like we were talking before about imposter syndrome, like it's part and parcel, and a little bit it's our culture, right? Like we sort of put people who are famous, whatever level that is, on a pedestal. But my daughter, it's funny, the Met Gala was Monday, and she used to work the Met Gala. She's shifted to a different job in PR now. She does art galleries and stuff like that. But she used to work at the place that ran the Met Gala, so she was always doing check-in. And so if there's a celebrity, she has met that person, over the last couple of years. And recently there was somebody who I was very nervous about talking to, and she's just like, they're just people, Dad. Like, and this is my 25-year-old daughter.
No, I'm figuring it
giving
out.
her 50-year-old father, like this advice. And I'm just like, thank you, honey. I appreciate it. But I needed her. I needed her to tell me to get me over the hump.
I totally get it. I'm still getting there. But I mean, I recently got a text message from a friend that I met through the podcast because he just got like, I don't think it's been announced, so we're not using any names of either the friend or the show, but he just got like a killer TV writing gig. So much so that I didn't even manage to like fully respond appropriately. And like a half an hour later, it's like, I don't think you understand how big. I'm like, no, I understand. I'm just still processing that I'm the one that you told about it.
It's very cool. It's good. It's good stuff.
And I think, I think it, at least for me, it's less starstruck purely than you guys do things that there's a part of me that wishes I could do or knows that I could do if I had taken a slightly different path, maybe still could do if I decided that I wanted it enough and was willing to give up other things, but appreciate beyond like I mean, for me, you give me most movie stars and be like, okay, cool. What's acting like? But you give me the two of you and it's like, oh my God, you created this, and what were you thinking, and how did this work, and how does your brain work, and how can I make my brain work that way, and just so I mean, I think for all of us, it kind of depends even on what they do. And it's not that
Yeah,
I don't know
100%.
that you're human. In some ways, it's because I know that you're human that it's like you're human and you've managed to do this. And I host a podcast out of my basement.
Well, I wrote out of my attic, so there's
I know, I know,
there's no
I get it.
distance.
I get that. That's my imposter syndrome. Because I also teach high school. That's a thing.
Very noble,
Um,
very noble thing. Trust me.
but
Very much so.
before we went off on this tangent, though, I had a question that about like being able to get personal and whatnot. Um, and I'm gonna frame it a little bit because I've talked to some people who are cartoonists that have done memoirs. So it's their story, it's their writing, it's their art. They have to spend the time with it. The one that actually comes to mind the most because, well, actually, I can't believe I forgot to lead the episode with this. We're gonna go back even another step. At C2E2, the last panel I was at was a comics in the classroom panel where the teachers actually brought their students in. So the students were the panelists talking about the comics. And I wanted to let you know that there were two different students who listed I Kill Giants as their favorite book that they had read in class
Yay.
and went into great detail about the whys and really clearly got it. And there was also one student that listed it as the hardest to wrap his head around and the one that he liked the least in class. So you went both ways.
Yay.
But the student that I was actually thinking about, as Ken was talking about being able to explore your life, and you were talking about how long it took you to write this story because it was hard, was actually there was a girl that she was almost embarrassed to say it. You could tell that like she knew that it was a good book and an important book, whatever, but she's like, I really didn't like my friend Dahmer. And I didn't get in the art, and B, the fact that it's real and like all that stuff. And it reminded me of when we had Durf on our podcast, and it, my friend Tyler, who did just text me that they have way too many books to put back on the shelf at the library tonight, so he's not going to make it. My co-host loves that book, is a serial killer nut, that sort of thing. So he was excited to talk about it. And of course, Durf knew he was going to talk about it and whatnot. But I remember there was a point where I like had to go, Tyler, I think Durf is really ready to talk about literally anything else. Because one of the things he explained was that was more a book that he did because he had to than because he wanted to. It was so stuck in him. He was so because I mean, one of the things he told us is, literally like a week before the story broke, he'd been out to a bar with friends from high school, and one of the things was, hey, has anybody heard from Jeff lately?
Yeah, that's wild.
And they weren't like close friends because Jeff wasn't like close with anybody. He was, but Durf was one of the people that he sometimes hung out. I mean, friend might have been an overstatement from Durf's side, and it might have been an understatement from Jeff's side just because of how little he made friendships, right? He was just enough a part of their lives that after not having seen him for like a decade, somebody went, hey, we haven't heard anything about Jeff in a while. Has anybody heard anything? And then a month later,
Wow.
it's like, oh. So I went up to her and I said, you don't have to feel bad about it. He actually had pretty much the same experience making the comic as you had reading the comic. If you want to try his other stuff, go read like Kent State or Trashed.
Right.
He'd way rather you read those books anyway. But where I'm going with this question is, does it make it any easier that, Joe, you have to spend the time with the words, but you know that you're putting it in capable hands with Ken, and Ken, you're dealing with a difficult story, but it's not your story. I mean, because I feel like you guys managed to really bring, and I know the fictionalizing things can sometimes make it a little bit easier to deal with messy and whatnot as well. But you guys, with both I Kill Giants and Immortal Sergeant, deals with some really heavy, really complicated topics, but you do so with hope, and you do so with candor, and you do so with the appropriate amount of messiness, where it's
That's good to
not,
hear.
it's not, I actually got a coworker because I got my pre-ordered copy of My Favorite Thing is Monsters book 2 yesterday and plowed through it. And that my going nuts was enough to get a coworker to start reading my copy of book 1 today, and she went through like half of it in her spare time at school. And one of the things she commented on was she loves the fact that yes, it's this story, but it's also that story, and it's also this story, and it's also because that's how life is. I feel like almost every creative writing teacher has said, no, got to keep it simple. If it doesn't move the plot along, take it out. Don't try to do too much. But almost all of the best stories do too much because life does too much. They become messy. This is a really messy book, but in like perfect ways. So I'm both asking the question of like how you approach that, but also, is it easier to have that collaborator? Is this a book that you think on both sides that would be harder to do if it was, I don't know if you are one of the comic writers who's only been a comic writer, or if you were like a Bendis and you just weren't a good enough artist to be worth continuing to be an artist. And Ken, I know you can write comics. So is it a case where, you could imagine doing the whole thing on your own, or is it like, this is only one that I could do if I had that level of separation?
Well, no, I mean, for me, and Ken could speak to his half for sure. But knowing that I have Ken specifically for these types of stories because of what we did with I Kill Giants, even though it was so long ago, made this infinitely, not easier isn't the right term, but I just felt, I felt protected in the whole process of it, and yeah, it's funny when I was in like school for writing, I don't love it when people sort of get overly romanticized about like the process and stuff, but there is an element like you talked about where you do feel exposed and you feel uncomfortable and you have to sort of walk through dark woods to get to the other side. And it's like knowing that I'm handing that stuff over to Ken specifically allows me to do that stuff in a way that if I was doing it into a vacuum, it would not be the same. Giants was written in a vacuum. I had a good friend who helped with notes back and forth, and that was very fun. But she was a TV person; she was not a comic artist. I didn't know who was going to draw that book, and Ken knows. I mean, there were multiple people that were going to draw the book and then didn't for various reasons. And,
well, I'm glad that they didn't.
I mean,
even if one of them,
without any offense to them, they are friends. But I am glad.
Well, I'm not asking you to name them.
No, I won't. No, I won't, because it's actually, yeah, it's
name 2 of them only. No, just kidding.
you wouldn't believe me. It's pretty funny. But
I probably would. I've heard. I mean, I've talked to Dennis Kitchen a couple of times. I've heard enough crazy stories.
Yeah, I've heard stories. But I'm so glad it. Obviously, like it would have been a different book, right? Whoever else wound up using it, drawing it, and so to work with Ken in that way set a foundation that I have no doubt the next thing it'll be, another great experience of self-discovery, seeing these things through Ken's eyes, having that come back and inform new ideas. That's why I enjoy working with Ken so much. So if I could draw, this is not the story I would have drawn. And actually I can say that with full clarity, because when I aspire to direct, I would like to direct films. this is one where it's like, oh, arguably you could write it. Yeah, there's a bunch of locations, but it's relatively cheap. I wouldn't direct this to save my life. Like I could write the movie, but I wouldn't try to
Joe,
direct it.
I won't begrudge you directing because it pays better, that sort of thing. But dude, comics are the best medium.
Comics are absolutely wonderful.
You
I would
shouldn't
like
be
to do both.
aspiring to direct. You'll go slum and film because they'll give you more money for whatever reason.
I'll go slumming. I don't have the patience to learn to draw. I'm
If for
too
no
old.
other reason than I hate it when you hear about Hollywood people slumming in comics, I want to bitch slap them.
Yes. Well, that I agree with. Totally agree with. So, but yeah. So for me, it would not have been, even if I had the capability to draw, this would not have been the one.
And yeah, going back to what we were talking about before, and then I'm gonna connect it with this, but like I don't think the question we're asking about, like, is it like important to draw from personal experiences and everything? And I kind of agree with what Joe said. Like I think it's important to or that's a way of working around stories. Like you take something personal and make it into a piece of art, you could say.
Art.
But I don't think like it's not because it's true that it's gonna make a good story. That's a
Yeah,
very
100%.
It's not it's because if not, like it's like being drunk in a karaoke at 4 a.m. and singing, and it's not gonna make a good. It is a true feeling, but that might not be a good song. So and that would also mean that then it would all be like either nonfiction or reportage, where it's like, no, we're just taking into account like actual facts, and that's what works. So and like there are many different genres, like whodunits or science fiction, and they don't have to draw from like real experiences. However, like that's what I feel drawn to, like an action scene without like the knowing what the feeling is behind, like to me doesn't mean much. If I know what the feeling is behind, then I'm all in. And I've been reading a lot of old books, like from 16th century Spanish books, and the truth is, like 400 years later, the ones that uh still we remember are the ones that are actually, let's say, emotionally true. Like they're talking about something that's like human experience, and like 400 years may have passed, but like the human body hasn't changed much. We are born and we die, and everything that happens in between, like we kind of feel the similar things, although the details might change. And so most of the books that we remember are either because they're groundbreaking, because they change something about compared to what was before, or because they're just beyond all the surface elements. They're like still true, and I'm like, oh yeah, if I were that person, I would certainly want to get revenge, or I would be sad or anything. So I think that the way probably Joe and I work when we work together is that there is in the case of Joe, like a real life experience, but because we're professionals, we're able to like take up a couple of steps back and be like, so what does this real life experience and what Joe went through and felt, what does it connect to, in a bigger sense of like to like human experience. And I would say that maybe that's, I guess, like in our case, if that's the craft part, the professional part, you could say, where it's like it's not just like it's true, like we're taking a step back and be like, okay, what can we build around it that will make what we want to say more effective. uh and for example, in the case of Immortal Sergeant, because it was very personal and we didn't have it was very raw in the sense that Joe was sending me the script as it was being written, probably for the most part the first version. So my role was, for the most part, I mean, or the way I see myself in the project was like, I want this idea or this thing to come out, and so I'm assisting and I'm helping around what Joe's writing just to make that happen. And so part of it is certainly, for example, like rewrite, reading through it and being like, I understand this part. What if we change this little thing around it so that we, it's more rounded or it's more easier to understand? Just taking that one step back, that, because I'm more, removed from the original material, and then being like, what if this and that? And for example, like I like very much, I don't know if you've watched many movies by Werner Herzog, a German filmmaker, who's great. And he has this like, he coined, I guess, like this concept of the, what was it, like ecstatic truth, from ecstasy, like ecstatic truth. And he was like, when he films documentaries, like he's like maybe talking to, being like, okay, asking a question, and he's like, person replies, and then oftentimes apparently like he goes back to the person and goes like, what you are actually trying to say is this and this and that. Could you maybe rephrase it and say it again to the camera, and I'm going to film that. And so, but so for in a way, it would be like telling a lie. It's like, it's not what the person actually said originally. However, he's like going deep, digging into the actual truth that's behind, and being like, maybe what you were actually trying to say is actually this, and this might be more effective. And so what I think we're, as creators, and in Herzog's case is the same, it's like we're doing is that in order to portray a bigger truth, because this is fiction, we're telling a big lie. And so we're just like trying to get into the trying to, well, not a lie, but like, it's not a factual thing, but that's actually the power of fiction. So we're just trying to find like the right device for that like bigger truth to be intact. So we're working with different materials sometimes than, like nonfiction writers or others. And in, the process here, my role was like, I get the material, and then, I'm like, what if this and that? And then, Joe rewrote based on that. Because like, for me, the process is very simple. If I don't understand it, I cannot draw it. So every time I was just asking a question, it's like, sorry, I don't think I understand this part. Could you maybe explain to me differently? Or what if we did this? Otherwise, maybe I understand it better if we have these 2-3 scenes switch, for example. So it's really just about like, trying to make the most out of, what Joe was providing.
Well, it's what you always want in any collaborator, but mostly what I've had through editors, over the course of time. It's like the really good editors help you find the story you're trying to tell, and that's what Ken has always done, especially on Sarge, like to even a higher degree than on I Kill Giants. But I mean, with Sarge, there was no question, because like you said, you were getting the stuff from second one, and then luckily, like you said, we are at least professionals with air quotes around it, so then we have some craft we can put on it.
Exactly.
And, yeah, it's like when you mentioned about like the right balance of messiness before, it's like part of that is this thing was always going to be a road trip, so you can look at the history of road stories, right, whether they're novels or movies, and it's like there are essentially circular scenes where the protagonist and whoever they're with goes through some weird event, and it pushes the story forward just a little tiny bit as they are physically moving towards their emotional conclusion, right? And then they're moving forward and somebody else is standing still, and those are the people you cut away to. Like, this is, I didn't make that up. That's like there's a lot of places we can look at. But the story balances itself out because thematically they're all tied together, the relationships are clear, etc. So that's like the demystification of how do you take this big messy thing and then lay it out in a way people will understand it and process it and be able to consume it, whether you have, an expert like Ken crafting the thing like a Fabergé egg. It's like I study structure. Like that's the craft part of my job, right? So like I know how those things work and how they're supposed to play out. Whether or not I fully execute whatever, that's up for readers to decide, but that's how I do it. And the craft comes in. I wouldn't say it's like big emotional dump and I vomit it all and then I craft it. They go hand in hand. Because you sort of, for me, I go like, this feels like it is this type of story. It's coincidental that I used to take a lot of like weird trips with my dad on a motorcycle. You know, like that did happen. None of them were quite this, this long, but that, I had something to tap into, but it was much more about, knowing that there was going to be a journey that these guys had to go on physically as well as emotionally, because they weren't going to do it in the stasis that they were in up top,
So you brought up motorcycles, so let's not just kidding. Just kidding. Two things. We'll
Well,
talk
I was about to say
motorcycles.
he brought up editors, and this book had one of my favorite editors too.
Oh, that's true. Joe, Joe Illidge absolutely brought it to it's funny, we get so used to talking about our huge chunk of the process, but Joe
I
came
kicked
in.
myself for not thinking to email Joe to join us tonight until like today, and then decided not to, even though he's told me once or twice, you can do that. If I'm free,
Yeah.
I'll come. And
Well,
if
I
I
mean,
don't, Joe's
he's
amazing.
a sweetheart, and he's super
Yeah.
smart, and he was fantastic. And some of the stuff that we were chatting about before this started about America and the times we live in and the characters in this book and some of the things that they were talking about. A big part of bringing Joe on board was to be able to have some pretty frank discussions about race and what was going on with cops and stuff like that in America, with somebody who was not being brought on to be like, I forget the term, I don't really like it, but he wasn't being
Not
brought on
just a
to.
sensitivity reader.
He was not a sensitivity reader, exactly. Like Joe, we had friends like that. We had people
I
that
mean,
we could send it
you
to.
can have good sensitivity readers if you're
Yeah,
actually treating them as like a serious collaborator. But yes, I think it's even better to have an editor who
yeah. Well, Joe, I
also
mean, and Joe specifically loves crime, so it was
right.
like he's
Yeah,
like,
no, I
no, I
wrote to
know
Joe a
this is.
couple of times while he's making this, and he's like, "Oh, wait, that one came out. You're gonna love the next one."
Yeah, and he was, because he loved crime and was into that. It was like he flat out, when we talked to him, he was just like, I will absolutely be helping you with navigating any of these sort of complicated issues. You want to make sure you've got a second set of eyes on, specifically from his perspective. But I get how crime works, and
Right,
I'm not gonna shit on your story if it
right,
doesn't serve the story. And
right.
that was a great gift. So Joe, yeah, Joe was incredibly helpful for me on that end, just because of also my own um paranoia, not in the sense of like being hypersensitive, because my career, I've never been particularly hypersensitive about that stuff. It was much more about the literal stuff that was happening while the book was being made. Like,
Absolutely. But I,
I was
I think
literally, it was Black Lives Matter, summer was
right.
going on, and all
I,
sorts of stuff,
I
cops,
I
etc.
think I think you did an amazing job of portraying real, overt, and covert and microaggression racism and real overly sensitive lefty, I'm gonna jump on it, and everything in between,
Right.
in a way that people are should be able to read it and understand, no, these are just people that you're gonna run into. And the people who are, I mean, I thought one of the great scenes was when Sarge was with the Atlanta cop
Mhm.
and
Yeah.
got to see that reflection of himself, only with the honest to goodness,
Yeah, capital R racist. Yeah.
right, and
Yeah.
go, oh, maybe my son's not quite the asshole I thought he was.
Yeah.
I mean, you could see it on his face, which is where I also wanted to go, at least for a little bit. I regularly say that what separates, I think, almost everybody who manages to have a career for any time at all in comics is a good storyteller, and able to do action scenes, and able to do, you know, the basic art scenes. I think what separates the good and even very good comic artists from the great ones, and Ken, I consider you one of the great ones, is three things. Knowing how to play with page layouts for both emphasis and pacing, knowing how to act through your characters and their facial expressions, and knowing how to act in your characters and their body language. It's actually kind of funny that you're doing this with Joe Kelly, because Joe, you wrote in the era where it became hyper realistic art that also was so often so much less expressive because it was hyper realistic.
Totally, yeah.
But they didn't tell stories through body language, and some of them did. There was still great art in. Go read Guardian Devil. Joe Q and Jimmy nailed it, but there was a lot of art during that time that was hyper realistic. It's like, oh wow, look at how many pockets and how many, this or that or the other thing. And it's like, yeah, but the face doesn't match what's going on. Yeah, it's a really detailed face, but shouldn't he be happy right now? Or shouldn't he be sad right now?
You know what I compare it to? Sorry if I can interrupt for 1 sec. What I compare it to, it's almost like a solid therapeutic relationship. And I do put everything in clinical terms because, well, that's what I do.
That's what you do.
But the writer, expresses, what they're feeling, what they're emoting, however they do it. But the artist has to assure that they interpreted it and summarized it correctly. And that's the beauty of a therapeutic relationship, is being able to say, did I understand what you were telling me? And am I conveying it back to you correctly? And that's the magic between the two of you, is that, you express your emotions verbally very well, but we got to see them just as well visually. And that's the alliance, or the therapeutic alliance of Immortal, is being able to see that. And so that's kudos to that. Second part, going a little bit further back with I Killed Giants. So I use the book a lot to my clients, especially when we're talking about grief and loss and whatnot. And it's funny because I had the question twice come up about, and how is she now? And so my question is, will there ever be a one shot or part 2 of I Killed Giants?
No, never.
Ah!
No, I will say that for a very, very short period of time, I entertained a story about Barbara as an adult, and it was very dark, and it was so sad. And I was like, I can't.
I'm gonna pitch something different. Ferris Bueller came back in a Super Bowl ad. Could Edgar offer you enough money to write a 1-page, relatively happy I Killed Giant story for Ken to illustrate?
Oh, Ken can draw happy Barbara as an adult anytime he wants. I'm sure she's very happy. The place that I went to was not happy.
No, I appreciate that. Thank you. I thought I had to mention that.
Yeah.
No, I appreciate it, and it's fun. It's funny. We've all looked at things as fans, right? Where we go, gosh, I wish they had kind of stopped, right? And Giants is for me, it was the story that we were going for, and people in various media, because we got to do the film, and prior to that, at one point, I remember who had it, but somebody read it and they're just like, could you add more giants? Because, she has to kill more giants, and, things that like people just don't get, like, oh, this is not what that is. And if you want, I'll make you a thing about a girl that fights monsters, but this is a different thing. And the temptation sometimes is there to go back. And, that's, in this particular case, it's one that, unless I literally, like, a lightning bolt hit me and I was like, this is the follow-up,
how many zeros are on the average lightning bolt?
On the average lightning bolt.
Would a motorcycle entice you?
I was gonna diss on Harleys, but I can't.
Oh, no.
Harleys are now fine machines, but when I was growing up, my dad used to say, and I'm sure you've heard this a million times, you got to love your toolbox if you want to love a Harley. And because back in the day, they were not known for being reliable machines, but that was a long
But
time.
as we've gone
still in the
over,
day now, let me tell you.
Edgar likes to fix them up.
That's
He
the
does love
beauty of
his
it.
toolbox.
That's the look. It's not a Honda. A Honda will last forever. You
Right.
can put the Honda off a mountain and light it on fire, and it'll still run. That's the beauty of a Honda.
I was just rolling around on a Honda. My brother-in-law's got a 750 that's like I'm trying to think how old it is. It's fun. It's probably from the 80s or something. It's just a nice kick around bike. He's in North Carolina. And I love that bike. It's an awesome bike.
I just built a Yamaha 750. I'll send you pictures and see what you think of that.
Excellent. Yeah. No, they're great. They're great. I have a Triumph. I have I have a Suzuki Boulevard, which is an old, ridiculous sort of large bike, which is, that was my first bike. And it wasn't really the right bike for me, but it's fun. But this, I have a Triumph Scrambler that I love to death. That is the right bike for me. It's
when you come to Chicago, we're gonna put you on a Harley, and you can pick which one you want.
Okay, as long as I can get out of the basement, right? I can ride.
You'll find your love, and you know what you're gonna say? I Kill Giants 2 is coming.
Ken, you have the right to kill me if that
Oh,
comes
no.
out of my mouth.
And there's one waiting for you too.
Yeah, that's true. We'll have to negotiate. Apparently, it's still we still have to decide.
So I actually kind of want to chime
You're
in.
back.
Yeah, I'm here.
Hey,
I wasn't frozen. This is my attempt at asking a question, getting past my sort of starstruckness.
do it.
Go for it.
So you mentioned, both Ken and Joe, that there's a central theme, a central emotional component to the story of Immortal Sergeant. And we also talked about it being kind of messy, and some people are beautifully messy, where you have some characters quite literally growing and going on a journey versus some being stagnant. I'll wait to share my responses, because Immortal Sergeant brought up a lot of different emotions for me, but I'm wondering what it was for the both of you. What was the sort of emotional component that you wanted? Maybe what was the emotional component that you wanted to share?
I mean, for me, it's pretty much summed up. If this story had come out 7 years ago, there would not have been even a sort of whiff for me about worrying about sort of the cop stuff or the race stuff. That evolved as the story was written, right? It was always about this father and son and the disconnect that they had because they saw each other through one lens. And ultimately, it's about coming to realize that everybody is a layered being, which is, what Sarge's X says, at one point, talking about layers. And, Sarge ultimately says that at the end when in his sort of speech by proxy, that he has Michael give at the dinner. And that for me was the thing. It's like I looked at my dad a certain way for a really long time, and then I started to see, find out about these layers. And same with my mom. My mom was not exactly the mom character in this book, but when she tells a story about being held up at gunpoint while she was pregnant, that's a story from my mother's life. That's a true story. And it was a cop who did it. That's true. Or at least in family lore, right? I mean, it's true as far as I know it. My mom was a lot tougher than I gave her credit for, because she was a lady that we would make fun of because she could literally, she sprained her finger once pulling a tissue out of a box. That's how fragile she could be. But she also got herself to Mexico to divorce her first husband in the 60s, because that's how you did it. You couldn't just get a divorce. She couldn't get a divorce. So she had to do that herself. She figured out how to do that. So she was a tougher lady than I knew, and I found that stuff out over time. And then certainly learning about how I was born, and not how I know how I was born, but the circumstances of the day I was born, my dad's response to being on the job and being a cop, all those layers. And then also wanting to be seen, you know, for all the layers that you have, which I think sometimes our parents are great at and sometimes they're not so great at, you know, whether we deflect them from seeing us in certain ways or they are not able to see us in certain ways. So for me, it was really just a story about everybody in Sarge that changes ultimately. They are learning to see people as multitudes and sort of accept them as they are. And once they find that acceptance, they're able to move on because Sarge does it with Crusher, Sarge does it with Mike, Mike does it with Sarge. So for me, that's what the book has always really been about. Then there's the social stuff that's kind of part of the wrapping.
Right. Gotcha.
I think like for me, and it has, you know, to do with what Joe said, but like part of what was interesting about the conflict here is, and it's embodied in Michael and Sarge in this case, it's like when you're a certain way, how do you reconcile the idea that somebody you love might be totally opposite from you? So, you know, what Joe was saying about acceptance. So it's very easy to be like, let's say if it's a relative, like, oh, if it would be easier if like all your relatives share your values, for example. Or it's an easier question when it's like, no, it's somebody who's like super removed from me, so I don't care. But it's like, what happens when you have it next to you? And so basically, you know, that conflict between your, you know, emotional part and maybe your more rational part. And you know, I guess like the answer would be acceptance and just being able to, and just like, well, the messiness of like, I might feel one way towards a certain person, although we don't share everything we do. And I think it's that would be for me like the bigger theme and the biggest like conflict for Michael, and what's more the most relatable, you know, despite the small details. And I think it's something that's, I mean, it's always like I think a struggle, you know, just like, you know, I love somebody, but this thing happened, and you know, what do I do with it? So yeah, probably like Joe said, like acceptance would be the biggest theme, I think, for me.
Gotcha. Yeah. So one of the things that, thank you so much for allowing me to ask a question. And I'm just thinking back, Ken, on your artwork. There were very few times I've looked at panels, and when I see somebody mad, that it scares me. When I saw Sarge seething, I felt for the character and I felt scared. So I got to just bravo for you. So thank you for that. But that strife, what came through for me was a strife. It was that relationship between the father and son and the ultimate sort of rigidity, right? So if I put my clinical hat on for a second, it was that this is the way I am and nothing's going to change that. And that was for me, one of the sort of driving points for that relationship. And ultimately, again, coming to that, even if I don't agree with you, I can't understand. And as you said, Ken and Joe, I can accept you for who you are. To me, that was one of the most profound things, especially again, my own relationship with my own dad, where it wasn't necessarily just emotional distance, it was also a physical distance, which also really stood out to me, and why this was something that really, really did speak to me and my sort of personal experience. So I want to say, one, thank you for kind of sharing your own story, and it's so beautifully done. And I would definitely love to see if there's a Immortal Sergeant 2. Is it too late to so we?
No, that would be Mortal Sergeant.
Immortal Sergeant.
Immortal Sergeant 2 is much more likely than I Killed James Part 2.
There's no motorcycle in it for you guys.
A couple of you just hit on something that I've been sitting on for a little bit, because it struck me as I was rereading today that it's not often in any work, much less a comic, that you come across the perfect thesis for an article or essay. You know, I work in high school. I'm special ed, so I help all subjects, but a lot of that is helping write essays and whatnot. And you literally wrote the thesis. If somebody wanted to explore the theme of this comic, you wrote it, and you were just talking about this scene um, where the mom was telling the story about having been mugged when she was pregnant, and in that scene she says, we're all made up of multiple selves, some good, some less so. Accepting this in me allowed me to accept it in others. um
Yeah. Yeah, exactly. And you know, like we were saying before, structurally, it's okay if she says that. If Michael and Sarge had said that, it would have been corny, right? So it's
Absolutely,
like
but it's
the thesis
also
has to
it's
be
the
kept separate. Yeah.
entire book
Right.
in
Oh,
one
100%.
panel.
Yeah.
In one panel, the entire book.
Yeah. Yeah.
And Ken, you were perfect to zoom in entirely on her. You just see her, very rarely do I think it's like a great thing to draw a panel in such a way that it draws all the attention to the text,
Thank you.
but
By the way, thank you so much for
but
all
this is the
the
right one too.
thank you so much for
What?
all the praise about the
Yeah.
art. Like for
I
me, the interview could be over. I'm good. Like I have enough fuel for
Well,
the day.
I was also I was gonna ask you a more specific question, but we went off in a couple places, so I'll ask it. And I'm gonna toss out for any artists that are listening. I know that most artists love the nice hardcovers and whatnot because there's process stuff at the back. There's a particularly good set of process stuff at the back of this book.
Hell
Ken
yeah.
has kind of a different way of looking at comics than you normally see. I particularly loved when you did your section on finding the right tone, and you took the same panels and did different coloring,
Oh
or
yeah.
the same panels and drew them differently. I mean, lots of people spend time on character development, not a lot of, or whether, I'm not going to guarantee that a lot of artists don't do it. We don't see often artists showing us that, hey, I spent a lot of time not just on the character development, but on, okay, now that I've figured out what the characters look like, what does the world look like? How am I
Yeah.
going to color it? How detailed is this, that, or the other thing going to be?
Yeah, it's essentially the cinematography part of the job. I mean, it's like
Right,
it is really, you know, and to have Ken being always willing to go, I tried it with, zip tones. I tried it with no zip tones. I
right,
tried it with this. I tried it with that. It's always, I mean, it's such a gift, and it
right,
really does get you to the place where the thing will have a feel, right? Which is what
right.
you really want.
Of course, like
Um,
you do all that process just to go back and be like, nah, I'm just gonna draw it as usual.
Yeah.
Because like so that's always like that. But I mean that's a process you need to just like
right. But
be cool with doing it as usual. But yeah.
but going back briefly to what I was saying about your art and what I really look for in great comic art, um, I've discovered how often, and you're one of them, that is actually uh, achieved through a kind of minimalism better than through detail. Um,
Yeah, I would
you
love to
know,
make a joke that Ken's lazy, but I know that he's not
no,
because he works so
because
hard. Like I've said it from
every
day one
line
that like,
matters.
yeah, no, that's exactly right. Every line matters and he makes it look effortless. He makes it look like
Right.
it, and it's so I know it's not the case. And I love talking about Ken's art because it makes him so uncomfortable when we give him praise.
I mean, and,
So
and
it's
here I'll quickly share it with the people that we're talking about, because I'm just looking at the spread from where the line I just read was.
Mm.
And just looking at mom, when to make certain we can see the eyes through the glasses, when it doesn't matter. When um Val should have pupils, and when the eyebrows are more important, so you just make them gray, and the eyes themselves don't matter. It's the eyebrows and the nose and the head angle that matter. So without ever losing the shape and the posture of humans, you emphasize the parts that need to be emphasized and let other parts go. Um, and that's impressive when people know just to drop a background or whatnot. But to know that, hey, I'm gonna make it so we just see the glasses rather than the eyes through the glasses, even though 3 panels before I showed the eyes through the glasses, is impressive. I noticed I think in even the part that Lee was talking about where um the the Sarge was literally scary. You did something that I've really only seen Jaime Hernandez and Stan Sakai do on a regular basis, which is I think you added teeth.
Oh,
He suddenly had a lot more teeth and they were sharper. you
Sharp
know
teeth.
we have a weekly or semi-weekly, because managing to pull off a weekly thing when you've got 3 or 4 voices on it is hard, but we've got a weekly issue by issue Love and Rockets podcast. And one of the things that we marvel at the most about Jaime is how he's willing to shift between completely different styles on the same page. It's like you'll have a manga style, you'll have his traditional, very clean, realistic style, and you'll have like a Charles Schultz overly exaggerated kid style, all on the same page based on what was needed for that particular panel to impact the way that it should. And I see some of that in you. And I love it. And my question is, just because I'm not an artist, so I have no way to ask this other than this way, and I get different answers every time I ask it. How much of that is very carefully thought out, and how much of that is intuitive? How much of that is you have a feel for what's supposed to happen, and you barely noticed it until somebody like me is like, you did this.
right. We like thank you for all the praise first. And
You're very welcome. You've earned every word of it.
I think I often compare myself to if it were like a music band. For example, like this is a very like arbitrary comparison, but like there are people that are in terms of art that lean closer to the, let's say, the guitar or the singer, and they're so to me that'd be like when it's a very like detailed art and very expressive art. And me, I would probably compare my art more to like bass and drums. So I'm there to
Rhythm
like,
section.
yeah, and then I'm there to like create the beat, and that's kind of like my when it comes to more the craft part, it's very important. Because like through those panels and the way the rhythm basically that we're creating visually, once you start reading it, like you don't really probably notice it, but like it just feels natural, it just feels organic, and you're connected with the characters and the emotions and the pacing. And that's where again, like within, then it becomes very, and that too would be like you're in a way connected to the story, not by through like a very detailed art, but like through a very accurate pacing. And so for me, lots of the work Joe and I did together was based on the storyboards. So it was like a sketch with all the dialogues, and we're like, what if it looked that way? What if it looked that other way? And what if we make this panel bigger, smaller? We switch this speech from here and there, and it's all in the search of the right pacing for that. And then like once you have that and you have the structure, so let's say once you have the script, then you go into the storyboard, and once you've polished that, then it's very easy to go onto the art and make the right choices of like, I need this here, I don't need that here. It's so when I draw, I don't think much anymore. It's a much more intuitive process because I know the thinking has been done before. So then I'm just like in the groove, you could say, and I like listening to like very, I don't know, like rhythmical music, and just enjoy it because like all the other thing has been being taken care of. And so sometimes the thing with comic art specifically is that when it's very detailed, that forces you to spend more time on the panel because you're trying to decipher what's happening there, and so that slows you down. And so so it's something you can play with. More details equal more time, and bigger panel, more time too. So it's all these like small things that I would just like use in my advantage and be like to advantage of the story, and just make the choices that we need. But like when you have a very detailed artwork throughout the whole book, sometimes the rhythm might be more difficult to like portray as it should. And the same as for the acting, when it's everything looks like it's I mean, I'm thinking about like the typical like scenery, not even like in a painting when there's a wave, for example, a beach and a wave, and the wave is like frozen, and it's like, is it accurate? Yeah. Is it like feels like it's moving? It's like, no, it feels just like if it was made with glass. And I guess it's the same for comics. So like, to me, the biggest praise I could get as an artist, or the one I like, is like when people just say me like, listen, I just started reading page one, and I just got the page to the very end without even stopping in the middle, and like not thinking about the art. I'm just in the story. That's it. And that's the most valuable thing. Then of course, like, if they're like, oh my god, I love how you drew this part, and the other.
That's pretty much how I've read both of the books the first time through, because I
Mm,
host a podcast and because I'm the guy that in all parts of my life like to like break down why it works.
mm,
Not I mean, I've talked a few times. I like to sometimes the comics that I love, and I haven't done this with yours yet, but I'm certain that I will. I like to actually sometimes read them panel by panel on my phone because it forces me to really look at what they were doing in that panel. The example that I always use is I've adored Saga since I met Saga, but it wasn't until I went panel by panel that I went from Fiona is a great artist to, oh my God, Fiona is one of the best artists. The little things she does that impact the story once you've identified them. You realize, oh, I felt this because she did this, that you don't notice on the first reading, the second reading, the third reading, the fifth reading. You don't notice until you zoom in and go, oh, are the panels crooked when there's violence? They are, aren't they? or
and the beauty
or
is like, oh, go ahead.
there's RCA plugs on a VCR in space.
Mm.
you know?
Yeah, and the beauty to me is like when you don't notice. I mean, it's the
Well,
same for me
again,
when I
that's
enjoy music, or
completely invisible the first time through.
yeah, yeah,
Um,
and
first,
and
I mean, for me, 10 or 20 times through. It wasn't until like I went panel by panel a month before they came back that I went, holy shit, that's why this is so good.
yeah, and
I was
I think
giving
that
Brian way too much credit.
Other
and
writer just riding on the coattails of a good artist.
no, not at all. But I think like there's, I mean, for example, like me personally, like I know already that I'm very against whenever, I mean, this very like intellectual academic art, when they're like, no, 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 you won't be able to understand or enjoy this unless you know all these other things before. I know it's a specific way of enjoying art,
Yeah.
but to me, I I I like it very much when people, creators, get very deep into their art, but they are able to make it so simple that anyone can get in. Like anyone can
Well,
enjoy your.
I totally agree with you on that. And I think I have a particular problem with it in comics, which, um, yes, the art is important and it's a real art. And yes, the writing is important and it's a real writing gig. But at the end of the day, it's a storytelling medium.
Mm,
So how well the story was told is what
yeah,
matters the most,
I
Yeah.
mean,
not whether
Well,
or
it's
not.
it's also what you were saying before about why it's such a great medium is that like
Right.
when Ken mixes up styles on a page, or like you were talking before about Jaime, or like, growing like the comic that got me into comics was, New Mutants with Sienkiewicz, right?
Oh
And it's
yeah.
like, and you can objectively
Funny
go,
story when you're done with this.
he's an exceptional painter,
Right.
you could look at all this stuff, but to have the ability to go, you are disoriented right now because I just drew like a spiral off of this character's eyeball that's this big for no seemingly apparent reason. like that was the sort of stuff that hooked me. And he does that often in a more Baroque way and with texture and stuff like that. Ken does it with varying the styles, the way, sliding that more cartoony, less cartoony thing. We can't do that in live action. We can't do it. You can do it in animation. There's so many medium we can't do that in because it's so jarring. It breaks the experience. And like Ken is saying, when done correctly, even those wildly divergent moments feel of a piece and they don't take you out of it. That's
right.
That's something only comics can do, which is really quite miraculous.
Since you brought up Sienkiewicz on New Mutants, I have to do my quick shout out that in a roundabout way, that's what got me into comics as well. Though when I say roundabout way, my dad, who was a relatively avid comics reader in the 60s and 70s, was still keeping up on Claremont and then Sienkiewicz on New Mutants, which is how I got to go to the comic shop first time, where I initially debated between Marvel Team Up and World's Finest because they each had two heroes. But then at the counter in a nice display was Marvel Superheroes Secret Wars #1, and it had all the heroes. So that was my first comic book, but we were only in the shop because Dad was there to pick up his New Mutants.
Nice. Well done.
Which is a story I told to Bill Sienkiewicz when I had him sign a book to send to my dad.
As somebody who received a signed Sienkiewicz book from their son, I can tell you that's very meaningful. So that's very exciting.
So, let's let Edgar get into some
no pressure.
Deadpool and psychology. We put Joe on the spot for a few minutes.
I don't want to go past what you guys' times are allotted, so I'll make.
Well, actually, I should ask really quick because we are at like the 2-hour mark. Are you guys still okay for time? Can I have Edgar?
I'm good for a little bit longer before I turn into a pumpkin, but I don't want to.
Okay.
Ken's starting his day, and he's a much more professional person than I am.
Oh no. I have stamina for probably because it's noon, so probably in around half an hour I'm going to be really starving. But for now I'm cool.
Okay.
It's just like hunger.
You're allowed to eat on the air. We'll let you.
I know. Thank you.
I still got my sandwich and finished here. It's still sitting here.
Good choice.
I'll make it quick and easy, just to bear anybody the pain of listening through me. So Deadpool. Quick first question: hero, anti-hero, villain?
Yes. No, I'm not going to dodge the question that way. So for me, when I was lucky enough to score that assignment, part of how I got it was Matt Idelson had been given the book, and he had appeared in a couple of limited series and obviously in New Mutants up to that point, and it was like, hey, he's going to do an ongoing. And I read that stuff and I was like, this guy's rough. Like, to me, he's pretty dark. And as much as I like dark things, as I told you, I'm a sad boy at heart, and I read The Crow, which I hope people know I love The Crow. I'm not crapping on it. I was like, there's got to be something else going on with this guy. So it came, basically the place we got to was that he is a person who wants to be better and doesn't believe he deserves to be better because of the stuff he's done in his life. And if he ever manages to do the right thing, the universe kicks him in the balls. Like, that's where we got to. So to that degree, I feel like I was trying to write an anti-hero because he aspired to be better than he was. So there was a heroic side to him, but he would self-sabotage constantly. And so you were watching this guy kind of implode every sort of couple of arcs, that in and of itself, I don't think is particularly heroic. And then where we would have gotten to, he had to confront a past that was especially villainous. Like, we didn't get to do those stories, but if you look at the run, we kind of get up to this point where the T-Ray, who's like a main antagonist throughout my entire run, and you don't really know why. He's just like, he just hates him from the past, and a lot of people hate him. We were going to do this story that the identity of Wade Wilson actually belonged to T-Ray, and that Deadpool had stolen it from him in a darker period of time. And so it was going to really unravel kind of what he even thought about himself. And it wasn't like he had amnesia as much as it was more selective. Like, I just don't look back there. And then he would have no choice but to confront it. So, at various times he is meant to be heroic, and he's meant to be a fool. He's meant to be an anti-hero. He's meant to be a villain. We were talking a little bit before about just like, does he have a code or not? He's definitely somebody who like lives in chaos, like, for sure, because especially his sort of a little bit of victimhood of just being like, oh, well, I got cancer and, luck of the draw, and then I got cured and it turned me into a monster. Like that constant self-reflecting, like, no matter what I do, the universe craps on me. And using that as an excuse for bad behavior, right? That's a pretty common drumbeat in my run. And there are some people that call him out on it, like Al or Siren, and then there are people that want to exploit that, because having a guy like that in your life, for Typhoid Mary, it works out great. For the people that want him to do evil, dirty things, it works out great. And that's how you build the cast, right? To constantly pull him. And then it's, how does he react to those levers that defines him as a character? So, long answer to get to,
beautiful.
I think he's an anti-hero. I hope that makes sense.
That helps me understand a lot better. Short and quick. So then Thanos can be an anti-hero?
It's funny. I forgot who I was literally just talking to about that first, like, when you look at Infinity War and Endgame, and maybe I just saw somebody talking about it, but they were like, if you look at that movie and you dissect it sort of, Robert McKee story style, Thanos is on the hero's journey and he wins in the end, right? That's it. That is how that movie is built, and the Avengers are the antagonists and they fail. So, from his point of view, yes, you could say he's an anti-hero, but the logic of what he's doing is so mad and broken that it sort of does. I mean, he's the Mad Titan for a reason, right? I mean, it's like, so I think it's pretty clear that he is still the villain. It's funny, like you were saying before we started the chat, like the term anti-heroes definitely has been diluted, I think, over the course of time. Kind of for me, it usually just means sort of like, oh, it's like basically a bad boy. It's like, it's like you're watching somebody go through a story that is morally gray, but this is the person we're rooting for, as opposed to going like, this person actually is untenable as a hero, but you're watching them on a journey that would typically be reserved for a hero. And that's what I hope sort of my chunk of Deadpool kind of winds up at, where you sort of want a person, I think, when they see an anti-hero story, to be uncomfortable, because they're relating to somebody that they would not want to be in the same room with, ideally. But it's not going, oh, it's Jack the Ripper, right? Like, it has to be somebody who's like understandable and not so broken,
well, I mean,
so as to be psychotic, right? Like, because then it's
Alan Moore. He's definitely the hero of British royalty.
Oh, well, there you go.
I mean, it's all a matter of perspective.
All a matter of
perspective. Kenobi says what I said is true from a certain point of view.
From a certain point of view.
It's all perspective and it's all relative. Okay, I'll make another easy question. So what was your in for Deadpool?
Oh, it was very much that feeling of like, I think we all feel put upon by the world, right? Like we have certain things where like, God damn, I did the right thing. Why am I getting crapped on? Like, just across the board. It's, you did your best at work. Your boss only notices the thing you didn't do well, right? Or you're trying your best with your partner and they're pointing out the thing you forgot to do or whatever. I think that's a pretty common thing. And so just extrapolating that out bigger to go, yes, we're going to root for a guy who is fun and he's funny and buoyant and just says whatever's on his mind, which certainly everybody wishes they could do, right? There's a fantasy of that. But we're going to see him get constantly, shot down and pick himself up again. Like, when we were talking before about Sarge and then sort of like the heart of those things, or even talking about like the shonen stuff up top, there's the dramatic questions, but there's also the dream, right? There's always a dream in there. And so like for Sarge, we were talking, just so happened that my comic book shop did a book club and my wife rammed Sarge into her book club, which was very funny because all these ladies had never read a comic before, which was awesome. And the perspectives of all male comic book reading crew versus female non-comic crew were really interesting. But when I was talking to the guys, it really did become like a 2-hour therapy session where everybody was like, well, me with my dad, and we had all these daddy issues that we all went through. And people were really responding ultimately to the dream of, I wish I could connect with my father, right? So like all the stuff about the thematic heart that we talked about before with people are layers and we're multitudes and trying to accept, etc. That is the theme. But the dream is, I just want to connect with my dad. I just want my dad to see me and I just want to see him and I want to have that relationship. With Deadpool, the dream is no matter how bad things get for me, I can pull myself up again and just dust myself off and keep on trying. And I'm going to laugh about it. I think that's why he really endures as a character and works best when he's getting dumped on, because if he's just like a psychotic killer and he murders everybody and moves on and cracks jokes, it feels empty. And if it's all gloom and doom or horror or whatever, that feels not quite right either. He's got to live in that liminal space between, comedy and tragedy and just keep riding that wave. Because I think the dream is that bad things will happen to me and I will suffer through them, but I can come out on the other side, dust myself off and try again.
So it's safe to say that you believe in redemption. Even the worst person can redeem themselves.
I think about that question a lot, honestly. Because I've got some people that I don't think are redeemable, like there's, but that's probably also in a small window of time, right? So like redemption there's certainly a big chunk about redemption in Immortal Sergeant. Mm-hmm. So I think Sarge is redeemable. I think everybody in it are redeemable with one or two obvious exceptions, like super racist cop in Georgia, right? Everybody's got their thing. When I think of the people who I have the most distaste for, if you say, well, in the thought experiment of you have unlimited time and they have unlimited time to grow and change, could they be redeemed? And could they look back at their past and go, I really screwed up that horrible thing that I did
and wanted to?
Yeah.
Because that's part of what I'm hearing is a difference in what you're describing about Wade is he wants to do better. He might not know how. He might be too dumb or too macho to go find a therapist. Right. He certainly gets shit on over and over again, but he doesn't think that he's doing good. I think that's one of
often,
the differences.
Yeah. I mean, often he does not, and then usually when he does,
when he's clearly not doing good, he is like a. I mean, I think that to me is the difference between an anti-hero and, I mean, when I think about the Punisher and certainly about how he's been so misunderstood by the people who love sticking his logo on things.
Yeah.
He's under no delusion that he's a good guy.
Right. No, absolutely.
Yes, he's killing bad guys, but he doesn't think that makes him a good guy.
Right.
It never has. And I loved it when Rosenberg got really specific about it when he called out the cops for having his logo on their car. He's like, do you not get what I do?
Yeah.
You,
For
are
sure.
not supposed to be like me. You're supposed to be better than me.
Yeah, no, absolutely. And that's, when, are there irredeemable humans? Like, I don't know if they're, are those types of people like so broken that you can barely define them under the same rules, right? Of a sane person and an insane person, right? Do the rules apply in different ways? But I like to think that I believe in the ability of people to redeem themselves. It's pretty important to me.
Well,
Like as somebody who's certainly experienced a lot of change in my lifetime and seen a lot of people who, I if you had told me when I was 20 that I would be friends with people who had spent time in jail, I would have been like, "Oh, but you out of your mind. My dad's a cop. I'm afraid of jail. I'll never be." And I know people who've done things and served time and they've come out on the other side and, they're okay, right? Yeah. I mean, it's like, and more people than I would care to admit than I would admit typically, right? It's like I've hung out with crack addicts, I've hung out with all this stuff. It's like people can change, and so once I take that as like a foundational element of my thinking, then I have to apply that across the board, right? If I don't, then I'm kind of being disingenuous. Now, somebody can prove me wrong, right? You give somebody the opportunity to redeem themselves and then they drop the ball miserably. But
well, and also the advantage of comics is in a sense you have infinite time, particularly when you're talking superhero comics, where
time heals all wounds.
Time's essentially static,
right?
But yeah, no, I mean, when I think about the difference between a Deadpool and a Punisher and even a well-written Venom and Doctor Doom or
Joker?
what?
Joker.
And ironic that I said Doctor Doom because he briefly had his reformed side, but like when they're doing evil things, they either don't care, like the Joker, or they're absolutely convinced that they're doing the right thing, and it's the rest of the world that doesn't get it. And that's where you're going to have trouble with redemption, in my mind, is if you can't even acknowledge that you have a problem.
Yeah, well, that's why the Joker is psychotic. So like anytime the Joker shows up on somebody's like, oh yeah, I'm like, Joker bros freak me out because I'm like, you guys, you don't want to be near the Joker. Like this is a bad thing. And
he's not an anti-hero.
No.
But they're making him one.
That's wild. I mean, that's a whole other. I will say though that movie is one of those things where I go, I understand why it worked. I understand looking at. I think it's beautifully shot. The acting is incredible. If it was not called The Joker, that movie would not have been seen by anybody, and it would also not be what it is. It would have been a really good story about a guy with mental health issues who snaps. Right, that would have been the story. And for people to ride that wave and just be like, he's just like me. It's like, oh no, dude.
I wholeheartedly.
That's actually why I've always
podcast.
Yeah.
That's why I've always preferred the very ambiguous origin that the comics have used is Joker really should. That was my biggest problem with the Tim Burton Batman. Is Joker doesn't have a profit motive. Joker doesn't want to take over the mob. That's not Joker.
Well, and he's certainly a character who's like, again, like we were saying before, like these characters can be vessels for things, right?
Right.
Just in the same way a story can. So he is, whatever your version of chaos is, right? Like he can be an expression of that or fear or whatever. He can hold that. He's as bulletproof as Batman in that regard. Like I'll talk about bulletproof characters sometimes where you can have Batman 66, you can have Chris Nolan Batman, you can have everything in between, right? And Batman still works. He has become bulletproof. It is I don't think you could ruin that character.
I mean,
I don't think anybody
George
could ruin
Clooney.
that character.
George Clooney.
He
I
was
don't
a
think
good
George
villain.
Clooney ruined that character.
George thinks he ruined the
Yeah.
character.
He's being hard on himself. The character is just, there's something about him because as a vessel, he's just perfectly tuned. I think Superman's more challenging. I think Spider-Man's more challenging. I think those characters can be broken. I don't think you can break the Joker except to make him literally not the Joker. Like you just go like he's a perfectly normal person walking around doing his daily life, right?
Last question, 2 seconds. I'll have to take your time. So, will we ever get a guest artist appearance of Joe Kelly and Ken Niimura on Deadpool?
Oh, I don't know.
I don't
Ken,
think
would you want to do it?
it'd be super fun. I don't think Marvel would approve of it, but it'd be so much fun. I love that idea.
What cycle would it take for
Exactly.
Yeah, how many zeros?
Would Marvel need?
how many CDs do you need?
No, it would be hilarious to do that. Just because it would be so fun to see what Ken would do with all that chaos. Like we did an action piece. It did finally come out on a Kickstarter campaign, but we did this Tetsuka magazine, and it's a character called Blackjack, and it was so fun to have Ken like really get to do action. Yeah,
also,
it's like
thank you for introducing me to Kinokuniya, because there is one in Chicago, and it's
is there?
one of my favorite places to go.
Oh, it's the best. I was just there last week.
Edgar, it's not far from your office. We should go sometime.
Text me that place.
It's the best. It's just like going to the weeb heaven. It's the best. I love it so much. I love going. I was literally in the city a little while ago and a couple of weeks ago, and I was just like, of course I'm going over to Kinokuniya.
Yeah, I haven't been to the New York one yet. It's on my list for the next time I'm in New York.
Yeah, it's an awesome place.
I mean, it says it's the Chicago one. It's really in Arlington Heights, but I mean, close enough. And it's got the nice market and whatnot, the food court and the I buy my pens there now.
Sure. You got the good pens. Absolutely.
Well, and I get the multicolor pens. I've fallen in love with, actually, the last time I was there, I discovered that they had a model where you could buy like the case for $7 and any color that you wanted. So it's like, I have to have black just so that it can always be functional. But I then picked like 4. I think I did silver, like bright orange, a lime green, and it's in my pocket. What was the other one? Red. I did black and red because I'm a teacher, and then silver, bright orange, and lime green.
It's very good. Actually, and when I was there, I was trying to find your art piece, but I couldn't find it last time, Ken, because when Ken was out there, they had him sign and draw.
Oh, nice.
Right. I don't know where it is.
Yeah, I was kind of annoyed that I didn't see it, but I didn't know if it was like if they have a rotating gallery or whatever. So I was like, maybe I'm just not seeing. I doubt they like yanked it down. I mean, you came
the one I like.
Somebody offered them enough money that they sold it.
Oh, well, that is possible.
That like this is what I need to for my day today. I was like, I'm not sure, but now no, but I like in the one in New York, they have this like huge piece by Inoue Takehiko, so the vagabond guy, and like it's painted on the wall. But it's an amazing art piece. So like they've repainted the wall many times, but they just left that one chunk.
Well, see, this is where I'm going to give a shout out to my favorite Chicago store, and let you both know that you have to stop in if you're ever in town. Challengers, Comics and Conversation, where they don't do collectible books, and where most stores would have their quote unquote wall books. They have their wall that every artist that they've ever had do a signing gets to draw something on it. So they have a wall of original art.
Yeah, that's
I think is actually even a load-bearing wall. So if they ever move, it's it's just there, but they have a wall of original art.
Ken, when we were at Sullivan's store, what was the who else was on that wall that you got to draw on? Because wasn't it sort of ridiculous?
Oh yeah, they had Junji Ito, so the horror
Yeah.
comic guy. They had what's his name? Sorry, it's an Italian artist who works now in the States. Joder.
Oh, I thought that.
Milo?
Huh?
Milo Manara?
No,
That's
no, no.
probably
He
the
works for
most-
DC. He's younger.
Oh, for DC.
Wait,
I thought that there was some other like old school mangaka was up there because the Ito piece was super
Yeah.
cool.
wait a second. I'm gonna take a look at the picture. But
Yeah.
yeah, it was
It was-
ridiculous. Like
It was
Yeah.
another one of these like awesome like fame
yeah.
walls, and Ken got to draw on it, and I was like,
Oh,
yes,
yeah,
belongs here.
and of course we were like, we're not worthy of being here because we weren't. But it was so beautiful. I'm gonna try to find the picture, but yeah, that was such a nice.
It all circles back to imposter syndrome.
Yeah, of course.
exactly.
All
Like,
right.
of being worthy.
So, Joe, I got one comment, and then I'm going to ask my standard closing question, particularly because you guys gave me such good recommendations last time. I finally actually like looked at the Man of Action page, and when I hit
A very old sad man of action page.
when I hit the profiles, I went, okay, this is just one of the most common things in comics is people getting you and Joe Casey confused.
Yes.
So did you wind up in a studio together because you got each other's fan mail, or did you actually like meet and get to know each other in some other way?
No, it was amazing how often that would happen. Is for a really, really, really long time. But no, we were in the X office together. That's how Man of Action started, really, because Joe was working on Cable. Steve and I were on the X books. Duncan and I had done Juggernaut. Like that's how we all kind of came together and met. And the LA guys all kind of also knew each other through mutual friends too, a little bit. But yeah, no, Joe and I getting confused is a very, very long run.
I figured, which is why it like shocked me when I pulled up the page. I'm like, oh, I should see who's in the studio. I'm like, how does that work?
Yeah, luckily he's still got all the hair and all the good looks, so it's easy.
I mean, according to this picture, so do you.
Well, thank you. I did have hair when that picture was taken, or I was at least doing a really effective like brush it all forward. That's what I was working on.
So my favorite closing question, and like I said last time, I think Joe gave me Blackjack and Ken gave me Delicious in Dungeon. So like this is definitely one to ask. Give me a book that you love that not enough people have read.
I'm glad you phrased it that way, because I thought you were just going to ask what we're reading, and I was going to be like, well, actually, I'm reading One Piece right now.
I mean, I
think plenty
don't
of
mind
people
hearing
have
what
read
you're
One
reading
Piece.
too, but what I find way more interesting, and I don't even like just the book that you love, because everybody loves Dark Knight Returns.
Right.
Tons of people love The Crow. Tons of people love. I like to hear what's that book. I mean, sometimes the way I phrase it is a book that you love that you want more people to read because you've got nobody to talk to about it.
Right. Gosh, that's a tough one. Like, I'm trying to think if there's anything that's current. I'm as I
doesn't
probably
have
told
to be
you.
current.
Yeah, well, no, as I told you last time, I'm definitely not up on everything. It's like literally impossible for me. I couldn't afford it, and nor do I have the brain power.
I mean, as Chris Condon and I have coined, it's the platinum era of comics.
Yeah.
It's the
you
era
need a platinum card to read comics.
Well, that's another way of putting it. But we just say, it's the era that if you're serious about trying to read everything good, there aren't enough hours in the day.
Yeah.
Particularly if
that's
you
how
have
it is
that
about
broad,
so much.
Particularly if you had that broad view of comics and you're not, I just like superheroes, or I just like horror, or I just like manga, or there are so many good comics coming out globally, so many old stuff finally getting translated, so many old stuff finally getting reprinted, you will drive yourself insane if you try to actually keep up on everything.
Yeah, literally impossible.
I know,
because Ken, do you have a good one?
No, the thing's like I've been trying lately to lean more on like mainstream stuff. So then it's like nothing that, I would be like, oh, we need to read more of, people should know more about these, whatever, because it's like
Well,
everyone knows
I mean,
it.
that's fair, but I will say that Nate Powell decided to throw out the people should read more to say, believe it or not, I've become a Wednesday warrior for the first time in 30 years. I've been reading X-Men
That's cool.
because nobody expects Nate Powell to say I'm reading X-Men.
Right.
Yeah. No, but like for example, it's not a book. I don't know if it didn't have to be specifically a book. Like I've watched in when I guess probably on the plane going to Europe to when I met Joe, and I watched an Irish movie that's called The Quiet Girl or Quiet Girl, I guess one of the two. And it's very small. It's nothing small little something. But the thing about like being on planes is that sometimes you never you have the luxury of like nibbling different types of movies.
Right.
Some of them, half of them, I'm like they're trash, and so I'm happy to just like leave them in after like 15 minutes. But like The Quiet Girl, it was very short, but it was like I don't know, I really loved it. And
It looks nice. I just pulled it up.
it's very, I don't know, it's very small, very beautiful, very
There aren't enough
nothing.
small movies anymore. I'm all for small movies. They seem to be starting to make a mild comeback.
Yeah. Well,
and
especially
thankfully we're in a
other
good era
countries,
for TV,
yeah.
which is
So
the
that
new version of
one,
small movies.
Yeah, I mean, in terms of it's funny. I'm staring at this one book, and I almost bought more volumes of it today. This will make Ken laugh because it's like dark and terrible. But Blood on the Tracks is like, oh my God.
Actually, I think Ken talked about that one last time.
I think
too.
he
I've
did,
read
and
the
I think
first
that's why I
volume
picked
and
it
I
up.
haven't read more of it yet, but I did really, really like it and will need to read more of it.
Yeah, the thing that's fascinating about it to me from a comics fan point of view is that we talk a lot about how challenging horror and suspense are in comics because exactly what you talked about before is that the reader controls the pace, right? So you don't have long, slow, dramatic tension building strings, and you don't have these like slow pans and all this kind of stuff that you could do in films. That book is the most tense I've felt as a reading experience, and I don't even know how long.
See, and I actually think that's one of the places that I think horror is better in comics is not just the ability to control the pace for the parts that you're not good at, but because you can't artificially make tension.
Oh yeah, but that's why I think it takes
If you're
a real
going to make
master.
tension, you got to make tension.
Yeah, if somebody can do it well,
Right.
That's why Ito is like the undisputed master of horror, right? Like you read Uzumaki and you're like uncomfortable the entire time.
Yeah.
Like why? And it's like, why is this bother? It's just like spirals. It's weird and it's silly. And then you just go like,
what's the
I'm
one
getting
that made
pulled in.
me that there's
But
one
this Blood on the Tracks though is so the part of the reason I find this particularly captivating is also because it's a drama. So there is no special effects, right? There's no monster, there's no magic. It's just this kid in this horrific dysfunctional relationship with a psychotic mother, and it is brutal. And I'm only about 4 volumes in. Like I sort of binged the first chunk, and it's so hard to read because which is what Ken had warned me about. He's like, it's a hard read, man, but I do like dark stuff, and that is one of them. That is one of them.
And that one, I often, it's already finished over here. I think it's like 16 or 18 volumes.
Mm-hmm.
And no spoiler, because I mean, there is very little to spoil, but like, to me, it feels like it's basically like therapy. Like that guy's been like going around and around and around, like, who's my mom? What was our relationship? And then at one point he was like, I think I've come into terms with it. Therefore, the story ends. That's it. Like, so that's the whole thing. Like, it's always like going around the same things, but like, it's 18 volumes, and I'm like, oftentimes, I could be like, oh, the publishing world, this and that, but this time I'm like, whoever decided to fund this comic, and he was like, we don't know how many volumes it's gonna take the author to come into terms, but like, let's go with it. like it's so incredible. I'm so happy this exists, but like as a pitch, it's very difficult to get approved. And yet it's happened, it's out there. And then the other thing is like they're talking about the reality of the, you know, it's certainly like reality based, like the author had a mom like that, because like otherwise I don't think there's any way to write something like this. And like although it's fictionalized for sure, but like there are certain panels where you see certain expressions of her, his mom, that you're like, unless you've seen this face, you cannot fake it. Like I wouldn't be able to ever draw something like that unless I had seen it. And that's what's like scary, because you're like, he's seen it. And and somehow like probably you and I, like we haven't seen that specific face. But once you see it, you're like, this is true. Like that's it. Like there no question about it.
It's so true.
Oof.
Have you seen Baby Reindeer yet? Has that come across to Japan? It's on Netflix.
No. Oh, I should. Okay.
It's a show about a stalker. It's a woman is stalking a guy. And the actress who plays the stalker, there are these moments where it's silent. Like she's not even saying anything. And you watch her face contort from like, I'm understanding what's happening. I don't understand what's happening. I'm angry. It's such beautiful. Like her acting is really incredible. I think at first it looks like it's a broad performance. So it's actually really intricate. And it's those micro expressions that are captured in this book in a way that you're just like, holy shit. Like you said, it is real and it's burned into this guy's brain and he's able to draw it that way. It's
and I think like that's to me like what's, you know, just not just comics, but like every piece form of art. When you get to that, like I'm like, okay, so let's say it's taken that guy like 5-6 volumes to get to that one scene where she puts a certain face, whatever. But I'm like, the setup, if it's all these many pages of comic, like, but you get to a point where you're like, this is true. Like I'm seeing something that's true. And to me, like that's like the drugs of art. Like when I see something, I'm like, this is true. And maybe I cannot explain it specifically, but I'm like, I know for a fact this is true. It's so beautiful. It you know, like getting to that point, like just, you know, it's worth, you know, the whole trip and everything. And that comic has a number of scenes where you're like, this is true. And I'm so happy, you know, it's been, you know, put into that like shape.
Totally.
Yeah.
And then on the other end of the spectrum of that, ironically, even though One Piece is been around for 25 years, everybody knows it. It never ceases to amaze me that Oda specifically says, like, I really want One Piece to be a worldwide phenomenon. And it's like he really thinks that One Piece lives in the shadow essentially of Dragon Ball, right? Like that it's not as well known in the rest of the world as Dragon Ball. So I will not ironically say that like people should not sleep on One Piece because it is this unadulterated fun.
Oh yeah.
With this, you know, certainly punctuated by a lot of emotion.
I think I've only done like 5 volumes because I'll do them like every once in a while. I go, oh, I haven't read a One Piece in a while, and like there's just so many that I'm afraid that if I start binging, I'll suddenly pay it. You know, have spent a paycheck on One Piece.
Yeah, I do. I read it digitally. I'm on the Shonen Jump app, and that's where I read it. And I just got to like 105, I guess.
I am too. That's right. You know? I can do it that way.
Yeah.
Thank you for reminding me that it's on that.
Yeah. But
yeah, it's like
I just made it
$2 a month, $3 a month.
Yeah, basically. Yeah, $3 a month.
Yeah. That's one of the best deals in comics.
Oh yeah, without a doubt. Yeah. It's incredible. It's incredible. But so I just made it to like issue 100 or chapter 105 or something. And that's like when the story starts, right? It's like now it really kicks off. But it is I don't think we talked about this last time, but part of the reason I'm reading it, besides my son just talking about it so much, is that he's going to end the story in the next 3 to 5 years ish, right? This is what he said. And it might go a little longer. I'm just
trying to imagine an American comic writer who had already done 100 some odd volumes, and each volume represents like 10 issues. So we're talking like
it's
1,000 issues.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
going, yeah, I'm gonna end it soon in
Yeah.
3 to 5 years.
Yeah. Well, I mean, and it has been the #1 manga with very few exceptions, right? Every once in a while it gets bumped temporarily
Right,
to the
right.
#2 slot. But what's so cool to me is that like so this saga is going to end somewhere in the next 3 to 5 years ish. It has been written and drawn by the same person for all this time, and then it's going to end. And like people who are not there for when this thing ends are going to be missing out. Like
Right.
that is going to be a
Oh, okay, you
humongous
convinced
cultural
me.
moment.
I need to start binging
That's why you
One
got to
Piece
start now.
catch up.
We got
Yeah,
like 3 to
yeah,
5 years,
yeah.
but
Okay, okay.
I don't want to miss
You
that.
want to have a One Piece book club that'll encourage me to read.
I just don't want to miss it, because I feel like it's going to be an incredible moment. It's also something I can bond with my son over, even though we bond over all things. But
Right.
although it's funny where he draws the line. Like I was asking him about somebody recommended as a joke, half joking, but you might know this anime, Ken. It's called like oh damn it, now I can't remember what it's called. It's something like interspecies reviewers. You know this one? It's
don't know which one it
basically
is.
it's set in a fantasy world, like a D&D world, and the gag is that every episode the party goes to a brothel, but it's a different species brothel, and then they report on what the sex is like, and it just sounded very funny. And
I
I'm
mean, this
telling my
this
son
sounds a
about it.
lot like Tim Seeley's Money Shot.
And I'm telling my son, he goes, Dad, I was willing to accept you would watch Beastars. It's okay if you're a furry, but I'm not going there with you. So he's got lines where he's unwilling to go, but One Piece we could bond over. So, but I just think from a cultural point of view, there's really something about jumping on board to this thing that has captivated people literally across generations, one continuous story. Like it is not going to happen again in our lifetime,
Right.
for sure, and probably won't happen for another 100 years, if at all. Like I just don't think this will happen again. So I'm really obsessed with that, and so hence I would say go
No,
check
you
out
just
One
made a
Piece.
very
Because
compelling argument for me to jump on much harder than I am.
But, yep.
Okay.
Starting
I
this week.
realized that I came up with a question while I was reading today that I wanted to ask, so be quick. Um, this is very Immortal Sergeant is very like 70s cop movie cinematic, and I feel like it needs a soundtrack. So can I have 1 to 3 songs from each of you that you think would be appropriate for Immortal Sergeant?
well, that's a good one. My dad had very specific musical tastes, and one of the
I
things that
figured
he
because Sarge was very clear that even though
yeah
he was driving, he was not allowed to touch the radio,
yeah
even though they were thousands of miles from from where
yeah
the stations that he had preset would be tuned in.
exactly. He and I don't think we I think we took out the joke. There were a couple of things with the car that we ultimately cut. One of them was that somehow it always picked up bluegrass because that's what my dad listened to. He loved bluegrass music, and it
Okay,
was like
I
no
love
matter
it.
where he was like, "How are you getting bluegrass? I don't understand. We're not even in the South yet. This doesn't make sense." But so there would definitely be some like uh oddly buoyant banjo music that I can't fully tell you where it would come from, but that was one of the things my dad liked to listen to. There's also he very much loved the original version of "We'll Meet Again" by Vera Lynn, which is an old war song from literally World War II. So that would wind up in there somehow, definitely in some sort of strange, uncomfortable way. And I think there would be some very weird on the down low J-pop that Michael listens to. My current obsession is Adarashi Gakko, but I don't know if they would be the exact right fit, but that there would be a little bit of that in there that he would have to like immediately, like the second you heard it, he'd have to muffle it because his father would throw his phone out the window.
like I don't think I have like good suggestions because like like I know way less about the time and everything, but like the one album that just like when I was doing the rewrites for the storyboards
Mhm.
and everything, the one album that I had in, so whenever I'm like in, let's say, in a groove and I'm doing a specific task, sometimes I'm listening to either one track or one album
Mm.
all the time. And I remember specifically, I was like easily for like 2 weeks, like doing the storyboards and editing at the same time. Like the one album I was listening to, because probably came out around that time, was Normal Fucking Rockwell by Lana Del Rey. That has nothing to do with the
No,
story or
I could
anything.
actually see that. No, no,
But that
no.
one,
I like that.
I was that was like the one thing that really supported me through that like writing, storyboard process. And yeah, there you go.
Yeah.
My
No,
beer
that's
for you.
good. Yeah,
Yeah.
big band music too. That's the other thing. Have you guys been watching Fallout?
Oh yes.
Yeah. I mean the soundtrack, the Fallout soundtrack is so good and so ridiculous. Actually, some of that would really be suited for Sarge just because it's what he would listen to and insist on, in the car. But Ken, have you seen Fallout yet?
No, not yet.
Oh man, it's
I should.
really good.
Great.
So
I
good.
hear.
I'm always too busy reading comics to watch TV. My wife
Yeah.
gets to control the TV.
I that's part of why I'm not reading as many comics as I should. I play a lot of video games, and then when my wife goes to bed a lot earlier than I do, she's because she works in a school, so she's up super early like you.
We
And
both work in schools.
yeah, exactly. But she's in
My
bed at
wife
like
actually
9.
went to bed at about the same time we started recording.
Oh, okay. So then you know.
And
So,
there are many days where I would have too, but wanted to talk to you guys.
yeah. Well, we get so I have this chunk of time that I wind up filling, and it's very often with video games.
Yeah,
Um,
go for
And if it's not, oh, well, right now, I mean, I'm so close to finishing Baldur's Gate, it's not even funny, but I've got like 200 hours in Baldur's Gate because I'm not a completist, but I take my time. A lot of Helldivers has been happening lately. Elden Ring, we keep revisiting because we're waiting for the download and the DLC. Um, and then Ken, did you see Slay the Spire 2 is coming out?
So whatever I do with my life, I have to finish it before that comes out, and then it'll be whatever it will be. Yeah.
But you've beat Slay the Spire. You've beat it multiple times, right?
It's not, no, it's a journey, Joe. It's like, like, and you're always like perfecting yourself and
Yeah.
yeah.
But Hades
I
2 also.
You
shit,
sound
yeah.
like my brother when we were kids, but I just discovered that there was an extra life in level 4 too.
Oh
We
yeah.
have to go back and play Mario again.
Mm-hmm.
I didn't hit that hidden brick.
Yeah. Yeah. And I definitely, it's one of those things we talk to when we talk to young creators, especially where it's like you have to make sure you create more than you consume. It's really important. It's like, although, as much as I say that, I was watching one of those master classes, and it was the guy who writes the Jack Reacher books, and he literally could read a book a day. Like he's like, I read 300 something books a year. I write 2. Like he's like that's and so I was like, okay, maybe this consume more than you create is not the same thing.
Yeah, I was about to say, like the first rule that Stephen King has in his on writing book is never tell me that you don't have time to read. If you're not reading, you can't write well.
Right.
And, carry a book with you when you're stuck in line at the grocery store. Read when,
Yeah.
you've got 5-minute chunks all over the place,
I'll tell you my dumb Stephen King story is that a long time ago when Steve Siegel and I were going, we were on the X-Men and we got an offer to go to Australia. We're like, hell yeah, of course we're going to Australia. And so we went to the airport. It's a very long time ago, it's still in the 90s. And Wesley Snipes was going to be on our plane. And, very big star. And he had this huge entourage, and it's like, oh my God, Wesley Snipes. Everybody's all
You
excited.
mean Willie Mays Hayes?
Yes. And so he goes and he's going to be on our plane. We wound up seeing him on TV while we were over there, which was funny. But we were there super early. So we're like, oh, let's wander around. And we didn't have the security concerns everybody has now. So we're wandering out, and outside, leaning on a garbage can, reading a manuscript, Stephen King. Nobody's near him. He just looks like a dude leaning there reading on the garbage can. And I was like, that right there is a really interesting dichotomy, but I was too afraid to go say hi to him. I was a chicken.
Sounds about right.
I was terrified.
I know that feeling.
Desperately wanted to say hi, but I was like, I can't.
Gentlemen, thank you so much. We'll have to continue coming up with excuses to have you come back. And Joe, I'm not kidding. If you want to have a One Piece book club, I will read with you. We can set up a time to talk monthly, quarterly, whatever works for you. It'll make me read, and maybe we'll get some other people to read too.
Thank you. No,
but
I'll let you know.
Your son can join too. You know,
he's already caught up.
I don't, but what I mean is, I don't want to take away the father-son experience. He can be part of the book club.
He will guide us along with questions.
Perfect.
And Edgar, I feel like you might have emailed me about Deadpool questions, but if you didn't, please do, because if there's more stuff you want to talk about, I'm sorry we didn't. You know, I'm happy to dive deeper. I know you're writing an article and stuff, so
I appreciate what you're giving me, and thank you for that. I definitely will reach out. I appreciate that, and I'll reach out to you as well if you don't mind. But just thank you both for even just hearing my thoughts. I appreciate you guys are always amazing.
Oh no, you guys are great. Thank you so much for having us. And sorry we kept you up so late.
Anything else you guys want to? No, I always enjoy being up late. I will be fine. Anything else you guys need to plug? I know Joe's got his. We talked.
Check out Wolverine, Deadpool Wolverine WW3 in stores now. 3 issues. Adam Kubert killing it. It's awesome. Immortal Sergeant is on sale at high quality bookstores near you somewhere. So definitely
probably low quality bookstores too.
Just
it
all
just feels like
bookstores of all
like
quality.
it feels like the type of book that would be at bookstores of ill repute as well.
Everything else I'm working on is unfortunately secret and or in the far future.
So we'll stop recording and you'll fill us in.
Yeah. What about you, Ken? You got anything new that's kicking around?
Nothing at all. So, but if anything, well, we have the the Tezuka short story that's I guess in bookstores. Yeah, and probably already
bookstores. Yeah, if it's not soon. Already.
So I think it's the Tezukomi. What was it like? I don't know if they call it magazine or whatever.
Yeah, Tezukami, and I thought it had a number, right? Wasn't it?
Yeah,
50th anniversary.
Second one. So yeah.
It was a 2-volume set. I have it somewhere, but it's not actually reachable right now.
Yeah.
I thought that it might be among my stacks of books right here, but
yeah, we don't have our copies yet.
Well, I kickstarted it.
I know it.
So they sent it to me.
Yeah, if there's anybody who's in the greater metropolitan New York, New Jersey, Eastern Pennsylvania area, I will be at Phillipsburg Comic Con on Saturday, which is a high school convention, which I love. These kids bust their asses to put on a really, really nice Comic Con. And if you look it up, it's it's just like in there, basically in the cafeteria, but it's gotten huge. And there's so many really cool, talented guests that are going to be there. They just keep inviting me back because I'm like the old guy that won't leave. But the kids are great. It's a really, really great vibe. So if you happen to be in that sort of Jersey, Pennsylvania border area, Phillipsburg Comic-Con on Saturday. It's really, really cool.
I now want to look this up just because I know people who live in that area, and I can possibly arrange to be there at some future one. It's way too late for me to pull it off this year.
Yeah, it's a little close, but it really is cool. It's
for a second when you were saying Pennsylvania area, I'm like, I'm going to be in Pittsburgh on the 24th, and then you went this coming week, and I'm like,
no, it's almost always the day before Mother's Day, and that's just when they have the time. But it's
and
really
because
cool.
it's a school convention, I essentially have to hope that they go longer than my school because they're not going to do it during the summer.
No, Yeah. And there's charity involved. It's a great thing. So
Yeah, it sounds
just in
fantastic.
case anybody happens to hear this before Saturday.
And I love Tyler will probably actually have it up tomorrow, so hopefully people will hear it before Saturday. But I love the small Comic Cons.
Yeah.
I mean, I like the big ones, but
Yeah.
okay,
They
I just pulled it
serve
up.
different purposes.
You are the second biggest name. You come up second on their little slideshow here. You know who's coming up first this year?
They've got somebody really good, but I can't remember.
Daryl McDaniels,
Oh, sure.
DMC,
Oh,
and also Fabian Nicieza will be there.
Yeah. Yeah, no, there's a
Virtual panel with Bendis.
Yeah, they really get a stacked.
Jose Luis Garcia Lopez.
Yes, that's who I was trying
Amy
to think
Chu,
of.
Rags Morales, Heather Antos. I remember we had her recently. She's amazing. Scott Hanna. Yeah, no, anybody anywhere near here. Looks like Crayola is a sponsor. Viz is a sponsor.
Yeah, it's completely legit. Like, and it's
No,
I've been going since year one. Next year, I think this is their ninth year. And they just get bigger every year, and they always get great people. And there are some people that live nearby, so I get to see friends.
And a general entrance is $5. And if you bring a canned good or a monetary donation for the local food bank, you can get an exclusive print. So I am doubling and tripling down on anybody in the Phillipsburg area. Phillipsburg High School this Saturday, May 11th from 10 a.m. to 4 p.m. Let's see if we can get an actual address just in case people actually.
Stateliner Boulevard, I think, is the name of the street.
Yeah. 1 Stateliner Boulevard, Phillipsburg, New Jersey, 08865. Just off Route 22.
Yeah.
And near the Delaware River.
It's right near like Allentown and Bethlehem, Pennsylvania. It's like all that little area. My son went to school at Lehigh, so there was a connection that made it convenient. So
very cool.
Awesome people, awesome event. So
I mean, I thank you like 10 times over for bringing it up because A, the high school teacher in me loves the existence and loves that you're plugging it. B, it's now on my short list of cons that I want to go to someday.
They honestly, they do a great job.
Just to give you an idea of how weird my short list is, I don't need to go back to San Diego. I did it once, long time ago, when it was still about comics. Sure. I wouldn't turn down going back to San Diego, but I don't need to go back to San Diego. I need to go down to Heroes Con. I need to go to SPX, TCAF, and Phillipsburg High School. Yeah. That's my list right now among the ones that I haven't been to. Maybe Rose City.
I want to go to TCAF with Ken because
that would be cool.
Is great.
That would be cool.
Great.
Oh, and like Thought Bubble. Thought Bubble I need to do sometime. Right. And Angalep. That's my list of the ones that I haven't done.
Yeah.
And you guys should do CXC sometime because CXC is like amazing.
Yeah. I haven't been in a while.
Have you done CXC? The Columbus Crossroads?
No.
Nope. See, they don't generally have a massive superhero presence, but I'm pretty certain they wouldn't turn them away. But they're the only con
I've got this little indie book.
That's right. But they're the only con I've ever been to that has like this last year. Shelley Bond had a booth right next to college kids who'd stapled their stuff together. And P. Craig Russell was there and Dennis Kitchen was there. And so were all sorts of indie creators that had made their stuff at Kinko's and, and everything in between, all in the same room. And you've got the Billy Ireland Museum and it's at the public library is the floor, and half the panels are at the public library and half the panels are over on the OSU campus at the Billy Ireland. which is a fantastic place to go to look at original comic art if you haven't been. I like to plug them too. So yeah, there's our little con talk, and we'll finally say for Ken Niimura and Joe Kelly, we will see you after the next page.
Hey guys, this is Tyler from 22 Panels. I'm here to tell you all about our Patreon. If you enjoy this show, please consider donating to our Patreon to keep this show going. We have many different tiers, all different levels to help you decide what's right for you. Okay, so get on out there to patreon.com/22panelspodcast.